Welcome to the collection of the wildest and craziest AITA Reddit stories of all time. From wild betrayals to shocking twists, these tales will leave you questioning who is really in the wrong. Let's dive in together. The first story for this collection is from an unknown Redditor. AITA, for exposing my girlfriend's best friend's paternity scheme. I, 26M, have been with my girlfriend, Becca, 25F, for just over a year now. Becca and her best friend, Cindy, 25F, are both also close friends with Mike, 30M, who they met in their first year of college. Something about Mike always rubbed me the wrong way. He's polite enough, but I find he's too handsy with the girls. I brought it up to Becca, who says Mike is like a protective big brother to them. Since Mike has been Becca's friend since she was 18, her family love him and invite him to family gatherings. That's why I keep quiet, since he's clearly important to Becca. At Becca's sister Bianca's engagement party, of course Mike was there. While Becca was talking to Bianca, I went outside for some air. It was cold out, so there were only 2 people vaping. At the side of the house, I saw Mike and Cindy making out beside an in-the-ground solar light. I pulled out my phone and recorded 23 seconds of their make-out session before going back inside. On the car ride back, I told Becca that someone told me they saw Mike and Cindy kissing outside. She panicked and asked if I had told Stan what I was told. I said no, and she was relieved. I asked, "You're not surprised?" She said, "Of course not. Mike and Cindy have been off and on for years." My mind reeled since Cindy had only been with Stan for 8 months. Becca said Mike understands Cindy in a way that Stan doesn't, and that she covers for Cindy and Mike because Stan sometimes gets suspicious, which is annoying. I lost some respect for Becca then. 2 weeks later, I'm at Becca's place and Cindy calls her. She answers the call on speaker, and Cindy announces that she's pregnant. Becca squeals, takes the phone off speaker, and puts it to her ear. From my side, I got that Cindy was sure the baby was Mike's, but she plans to pass it off as Stan's. When Becca ended the call, I asked her why Cindy would lie to Stan about fathering a baby. Becca said that Mike makes more money than Stan. Side note, Mike owns 3 gyms and has a personal training business. Becca then says Mike wants a kid but doesn't want any responsibilities or to deal with baby mama drama. So since Cindy and Stan will probably get married anyway, this made sense for everyone. I was horrified and told Becca that she's just as bad as Cindy for covering this up. We got into a fight and I left. Later, Becca calls and tells me that I'm being foolish for letting other people's drama affect our relationship. I thought we shared the same values, but that she is fine with lying about paternity sets off alarm bells. I don't see a future, but don't know if breaking up over other people's drama is the right thing to do. And I feel for Stan, who doesn't deserve any of this. I feel too guilty not doing anything. So, would I be the AH if I somehow anonymously sent the video of Mike and Cindy making out to Stan? Update. Yesterday, I posted about my GF Becca's best friend Cindy's plan to lie to Stan, Cindy's BF, about being the father of her unborn child, and about Becca's role in going along with the plan and covering for Cindy. After reading the comments, I decided that the best thing was to confront Becca and tell her that either Cindy tells Stan the truth or I will. Since today was Becca's day off work, I went to her apartment on my lunch break. Cindy was there, so I was able to tell Cindy directly. All hell broke loose. Cindy was scream-crying, and Becca was just screaming and defending her friend. They both accused me and all men of being hypocrites since we have bro codes, but we punish women for loyalty. I left mid-screams. Later at work, I was called to go down to the lobby because an irate man wants to see me. It was Mike, Cindy's off-and-on lover/friend, who is the real father of her unborn child. As soon as he saw me, Mike started yelling that I was a gossipy for meddling in other people's lives, and what him, Cindy and Becca do is none of my business. He was escorted out and banned from the building by security. I barely got through work after that. I replayed what he said over and over. What me, Cindy and Becca do. What? Was he sleeping with both Becca and Cindy? Separately? Or at the same time? Could they be some kind of throuple? I went down a rabbit hole and looked him up on social media, which wasn't hard since Becca tagged him in every pic. Turns out Mike is not 30 but 35 years old. That means he was 28 when he met Becca and Cindy at 18 years old. Could he have manipulated his way into their lives? Into their pants? Could he still be manipulating them now, years later? When I got home, I got a call from a strange number, but I didn't answer. Then that same number started sending me a bunch of texts. It was Stan saying just because I have outdated beliefs, it was no excuse to slut-shame his pregnant GF. He's talking about my outdated belief that there would be nothing special about my wedding night if I have unprotected before marriage, and so I always use protection. I figured Becca told Cindy, since they share everything. And for our 1-year anniversary, Becca said we should stop using condoms since she was on birth control, but I refused. Stan was texting insults nonstop, so I sent him the video of Mike and Cindy making out. He finally took a 4-minute text break before texting, "That was at Bianca's party?" Stan was there and probably remembered their outfits. I texted back, "Yes." Then nothing for 17 minutes before he texted, "Thanks." 30 minutes later, Becca started blowing up my phone. I turned it off, but I can hear alerts from my Apple Watch. I'm still reeling from what Mike said, and plan to confront Becca about it. In the meantime, I'm so mad I want to punch something. I'm so hurt I want to scream. I plan to take tomorrow off work to deal. Thanks to all who offered advice. If requested, I'll update when I calm down and talk to Becca tomorrow. Last update. I didn't know my first post would blow up like this, or my first update about my now EXGF Becca's BFF Cindy's paternity scheme. But here's the update. Since Becca told me off yesterday, I had turned my phone off and was ignoring all calls and texts. But from my Apple Watch, I can see notifications. This morning, I turned my phone on to respond to a text from Stan. I called him, and he apologized for his blow-up yesterday. He thanked me for sending him the video of Cindy cheating, and said he wanted to know everything I knew. After I told him, he said he'd already dumped Cindy, but now he wants a prenatal paternity test. I didn't even know you could do that. If the baby's his, then he will support his child. But until the test, he wants nothing to do with Cindy. I also returned a call from work and was told the man from yesterday, Mike, was pacing in front the building earlier this morning, but security must have spooked him because he left before the cops were called. Without checking her messages, I drove to Becca's and called her from outside, saying we need to talk. She agreed. I waited in my car forever before going to her apartment. When Becca opened the door, she practically jumped into my arms. She started saying she was sorry she yelled at me, and it was just her gut reaction to defend her BFF. But she doesn't want to lose me over Cindy's drama. I practically peeled her off of me and sat on the couch. I think I was just stalling when I first asked her what the original plan was for Cindy's baby. How would it benefit Mike to have Stan raise his kid if he himself wanted a child so badly? She said that Mike didn't want the full-time responsibility of a kid. So, this way he would get to be the godfather who spoiled the baby, and he would even pay for the kid's college later on. Then she said, but that's no longer the plan since Stan knows everything. But she quickly said, not that I blame you for that. She then said, now that everything's out in the open, she wants us to get back to normal. I nearly choked at normal. I got to it and asked her straight up, are you sleeping with Mike? She looked hurt that I asked that and said no, of course not. I then asked, were you ever sleeping with him? She looked away. It was a gut punch. I just stood up and left. She let me leave, but she started blowing up my phone as soon as I drove off. She called nonstop and left several voice text messages. In one, she says that her hookups with Cindy and Mike are done for good now and I'm her future. So that's one question asked and answered. In another message, she wants us to move forward and thinks we should try couples counseling. I no longer trust her, but I still love her. But I also know that counseling can't rebuild trust. So it's definitely over between us. I finally blocked her on everything, and might get a RO on Mike. The only good thing is, at least now Stan knows the whole truth. So, thank you Reddit for your comments telling me to do the right thing. OP is not an AH for exposing the paternity scheme of his girlfriend's best friend's paternity scheme. Not OP, but Cindy is an AH for cheating on her partner, and now lying about the paternity of her baby. She is an AH, a big AH, and I would rate her 4.5 out of 5 on the AH scale, and OP gets a 0. In fact, I would say, what OP is doing is completely justify and valid for the well-being of Stan. Let's now jump onto the next story, from Fun. Use 279. Am I useless for not knowing what my next move in life will be? First of all, sorry if I have any spelling mistakes or I don't know how to express myself correctly. English is not my first language. I am a 21-year-old young man who has been through everything in my short life, and I am currently lost. A little of my story so you can understand what is happening to me. My mother had me when she was 18 years old and left me with my great-grandmother and my aunt, which they raised me with much love, understanding, and kindness. When I was 5 years old, I had an accident which had to operate on my throat. For that operation, my speech was very affected because I cannot promote some words, or I have difficulty speaking because I get stuck while talking. Shortly after that accident, my aunt married an American citizen, which made her move out with her husband, and I stayed with my great-grandmother. When I was 9 years old, I had an accident which made me fall off a roof, and they had to operate and put 2 prostheses, one in each foot, to be able to walk again. At that time, I struggled to walk and try to have a normal life of a child. By that time, my mother was already trying to come to my life with her husband and my 2 half-brothers, who are a boy 4 years younger than me, and my sister 5 years younger than me. At that time, my mother moved close to my house, and I followed my normal life. Since I did not care so much, and I did not have a relationship with her, I barely felt anything for my mother at that time. In the student environment, I have always been outstanding for being an expert in science, specifically in mathematics, chemistry, and biology. I was always in competitions from very young, winning scholarships, and being the pride of my family, I felt at that time superior to everything, because with 13 to 14 years, I could do college-level classes without problems, and at that time, I felt superior to everyone, until that day came. My great-grandmother fell ill, and in a few days she died, and at the age of 15 I was forced to go live with my mother, which I did not want to do because I did not get along very well with my half-siblings, but I had no one else to be with at that time. As time went by, I started to get along better with my half-siblings because we only had a few differences, but we were able to grow up together and have a good relationship, very close. With my mother, I created a special relationship that I will explain later. And what about my stepfather? A few years before my great-grandmother died, he got a good job in Holland, which raised our economic position to almost upper class. I finished high school with honors at 16 years old, and with many scholarships waiting for me from different universities to start my new life. But I was too stupid at that time not to accept it and give me a sabbatical year to know exactly what I want to study. At that time at home, I saw how my mother was unfaithful to my stepfather and doing a lot of manipulation and scams. I tried to get her out of that life, which little by little I was achieving. Although in return it cost me study time, and that she used me to use my name in her favor, to lie to get her out of her problems. I did it because she is my mother, I was not going to let her fall, and that her whole life would be more complicated than it was at that time. But well, this is where it all begins, and I am looking for advice and help, because I don't know what else to do. When the pandemic started, I was 17 years old, and I was already looking for a university. But as all the universities were stopped for a while, because of the same pandemic, what did I do at that time? I studied on my own and played a lot of video games. I do not know how, but I got to earn up to $500 a week while playing Fortnite because I was very good at the game. When I was 18 years old, I was doing all the process for college. But a few weeks before starting college, I had a spontaneous pneumothorax, which I knew what was wrong with me because I was studying a lot of medical books and I wanted to start medicine at the university. I was short of breath, and I told my mother that I could not breathe and that I needed to go to the hospital, and she did not believe me and said that I am crazy. While she was arguing with me, I fainted due to lack of oxygen in front of her, and she took me to the hospital, and I arrived very bad, and they had to operate me in emergency. I lasted almost a month in the hospital because I could not recover and I had to go to the hospital for an emergency. When I fully recovered at 19 years old, I was ready to continue my college process. While applying to college, I also applied to several scholarships to study languages while studying medicine, and luckily I was accepted to study English while in college. I was very happy, and everything was going well in my life, but my mother was going to give me news that would change everything. She was leaving the country with my half-brothers to live with my stepfather in Holland. She promised me she was going to take me, but then she had to be living there to take me with her, and I believed her. A few days after my 20th birthday, she and my brothers left the country, and I was left alone in a third world country, with an income more than the minimum, since I worked in a finance company and with few relatives that I barely spoke to them, but I didn't care. I lived in a decent house with many comforts, and my mother sent me monthly money to complete expenses and everything. To not be alone in the house, I call my mother and tell her if it would be right to look for a roommate, and she accepts, and I start looking for a roommate. Coincidentally, a cousin with whom I played online was looking for a place to live to get away from the countryside and look for a new life, and he came with me. And well, it was fun. We barely saw each other since I was studying and working early, and he was working, but we were always fine. At the end of my 20s, I had an accident which caused me to lose a specific organ, the spleen. I almost died in that accident. They had to make me a 6-hour operation, give me several blood transfusions, and I spent some time in intensive care, connected to many machines that helped me to be alive. When I wake up. After the operation, the first thing I look at is the face of my mother. She, since she knew what happened, took the first plane and came to take care of me and to see my recovery. After all, a month goes by, and I am ready to continue with my life. Unfortunately, I was fired from my job, although my mother told me not to worry, that she will help me financially so that I can focus on my studies, which I did. In December of last year, I graduated from English studies, which made me focus 100% on my university career. A few months later, my mother told me that my process to go to Holland was finishing, and that in a few months I could go to live with them. I was very happy at one time to another. She came to the country to begin to prepare everything to go with her. I left the university to prepare everything. We began to sell everything in my house, and ready to go with her, only a signature of a document, which she was waiting with me in my country for her to sign and give me the visa to leave. But something happened the last day that we sold the last things I had at home. My mother had a heart attack next to me, which I knew at the moment that it was a heart attack. The first thing I did was to call an ambulance, and then I went to help her. When the ambulance arrived and I explained everything and her symptoms, they put her in the ambulance to take her to the hospital. My mother died in front of me, and together with the doctor who was in the ambulance, and I resuscitated her. Today, I still see her face when I close my eyes. I see how she vomited on her clothes, how her eyes turned white, and how her life was leaving her body, me together with the doctor working to keep her alive. The moment we arrived at the emergency room, I started to call the family, my uncle, brothers, and other relatives. While they were preparing to operate on my mother, the doctors called me, and I had to give all the information possible to try to see why this happened to her. But after 5 long days, 2 operations on her heart, and 16 blood transfusions, she passed away. The thousands of dollars I had to sell everything, also what I had saved, I spent to try to save her life. That happened 2 months ago. Since then, I am lost looking for a job, and they won't accept me anywhere. I can't be in college since I can't afford anything, and I earn money just by giving classes and science lessons to people in college. I am staying with an aunt, which I can tell it bothers her that I am there. But since she is my mom's sister, she doesn't want to tell me. I don't know how to continue. I just try to go on and on. But every day that passes, I feel that I am worse. And every time I get rejected from a job, I just come home to cry. And all my family just treats me bad and humiliates me, saying that I am not a man and that I should be working and studying. Man, that I should be working and studying, like before that, I am just a parasite, and that I am going to do badly in life. There are times when I just think about ending it all and taking the easy way out. I don't know what to do anymore, and I thought maybe strangers on the internet with a more neutral idea can give me some advice, or someone who has had a similar experience, how they got out of this hole. I would appreciate some advice at this time, and thank you for reading my little story. OP is not a loser because life is not the same for everyone. He has been going through a lot: emotional strain, personal trauma, and above all, loss of his mom. Handling all this, not an easy task. I would just say, keep moving, you will find your destination, and never lose hope. Let's now jump onto the next story from Own-Bathroom, 3131. AITA for not allowing my boyfriend to see my ex-best friend? I, 17F, and my boyfriend, 17M, have been together for over a year. For some backstory, me and my best friend became best friends in our first year of high school. The following 6 years, we were inseparable. We would go on family holidays together, spend months at a time staying at one person's house, often mistaken for siblings. You get the point. After we left high school, we met our now boyfriends. For the sake of this story, I am going to call my best friend Eve, her boyfriend Dylan, and my boyfriend Adam. We were always friends with Dylan but rarely spoke or saw of him. Randomly, one day, we bumped into him. Following this, he asked us to go out with him on a couple of occasions. This led to the development of the friendship of us as a four: me, Eve, Dylan, and Adam. During the summer, we spent most days together. Me and Adam were sort of third wheels. Nevertheless, Dylan made sure it was no secret of Adam's feelings towards me. Dylan would rehearse to me most days what Adam had said to him about me, all positive. Despite being flattered by this, I was never interested in boys during high school, and this remained. I was what they called frigid, so I wanted to remain friends. Over the course of the next few months, we all became closer. Eve and Dylan had begun hanging out just them, to which led to me, and Adam hanging out just us two on a few occasions. On one of these occasions, Adam accidentally slipped up and told me that Eve and Dylan had, and that I cannot saying anything because it was a massive secret that was being kept from me. I was extremely shocked as me and Eve told each other everything, or so I thought, even things as small as our trip to the shop. She knew everything about my life. There is not a single secret she did not know. This led to me and Adam becoming much closer, until one day he eventually asked me out. Despite the awkwardness, I said no. Following this, he made backhanded comments about it all night, and out of guilt, I said yes. So now, me and Adam were dating, and Dylan and Eve were dating. We all remained friends, but did not hang out as a four as much. Me and Eve did not see each other as much as we used to, but did still continue to see and talk to one another frequently. On the other hand, Adam and Dylan's friendship was somewhat strained as it came to light to Adam that Dylan had been sharing his personal secrets to me and Eve, but they still remained friends. During the early stages of mine and Adam's relationship, I completely admit and take full accountability. I know that I wasn't knowledgeable on the dimensions of a relationship, as I had never had one before, and so I was not familiarized with any of the norms. This does not excuse what I did, though. As mentioned previously, I told my best friend everything. I continued to do so, including things about Adam. He found this out through looking through my phone. This led to an argument, but I still continued to do it. He found out again and then said I could not see her anymore, but still remained in contact. Upon reflection now, I can absolutely see the wrong in this, and I would feel horrible if the roles were reversed. Me telling her everything was my norm, but that is just a poor excuse, so I will not even try to justify my actions. Eve, she did get frustrated that we could not see one another. We did remain friends. Fast forward a few months, I woke up to a text from Eve stating that she really needs to see me and the police were involved. I was extremely worried and asked for more context, but she was not willing to share over text. That day, I was planning to go out with my parents anyway, so I left my boyfriend's house in order to get ready at mine to get ready to go out. I was not going out for another hour or so, and decided that this would be a perfect opportunity to see her. So, I snuck out to see her. This was not difficult at all, as we only live a 10-minute walk from one another. We just went on a half-an-hour walk, and she explained what had happened. The next day, I also saw her just to ensure she was okay, and I was extremely concerned about her, as she was not handling the events that took place well. I did not tell my boyfriend any of this, though I did consider it. However, I could not risk him preventing me from seeing her at a time like this. Strangely, that night, Dylan and Adam went out together. This was odd as they hadn't seen each other much during the course of our relationship. The next day I went and saw Adam at his house and he was furious at me. Turns out, everything that I had been telling Eve, she was also telling Dylan, alongside personal things about me. Dylan then told Adam the night that they saw each other. This led to an argument. During that argument, I had confessed that I had saw her on the 2 occasions. He then messaged Dylan, to which they gave me and Eve an ultimatum stating that it's either them or each other. I was hesitant at first, but she immediately chose him. This resulted in the end in my friendship and the continuation of my relationship. Honestly, I took the ending of our friendship somewhat hard. It was like my childhood gone. In my mind, we are sort of still friends, and when I do talk about her, I never say a bad word about her, but I can still miss someone and know when enough is enough. Because ultimately, she broke my trust. She has tried to reach out a few times, saying she misses me, but I haven't interacted with that and have continued on with my life. Instead, this gave me an opportunity to stop smoking, focus on school, and start the gym. All of which has been very challenging to adapt to, but I'm sure it will work out in the end. This leads to me to now. Adam and Dylan do not see each other often, but every few weeks. On one of these occasions, Adam and Dylan picked up Eve. I know this because I have both of their locations. I found it out unintentionally as I got a notification that he had arrived at her house, Life 360 feature, and checked. I was furious but remained very calm in this situation. I texted him a breakup, removed his access to my location, and left the house to go for a long walk. When I was nearing home, he was parked down a side road near to my home. This meant our paths met. I will leave out the following events out of respect and remaining very personal things, even though this is anonymous. As a result, I had no choice but to stay with him. Around a month later, Dylan's stepdad is passing down a small business of his to Dylan and Adam, as he does not want it anymore. This has meant Adam needs to go round Dylan's in order to collect things for the new job, but Eve is round Dylan's every time. This has led me to feel extremely uncomfortable. Earlier today, Adam went over to Dylan's, and Eve was also there. It was clear from things he mentioned that he went inside and spent some time hanging out. It had been playing on my mind all day, whether or not he had seen her, but I held out asking him until later on, in order to avoid an argument. A few hours ago, I popped the question. He got very frustrated and said he didn't, but even if he had, he wouldn't be following any boundaries of mine, as they are irrational and stupid. He then stormed out. Normally, I am the one to initiate the evolvement of arguments and be the first to apologize, but I haven't this time. I just do not believe I am in the wrong here, and am trying to see it from his perspective, but can't. So Reddit, am I the for not allowing my boyfriend to see my ex-best friend? Also, I'm terribly sorry if anything lacks context or clarity. I've written this down very quickly to get it all out. Please feel free to ask for clarification if needed. OP is not the AH because she is understandably uncomfortable with Adam's interactions with Eve due to past betrayals. Her feelings are valid, and while Adam's frustration is clear, he should respect her boundaries, especially after Eve's breach of trust. As for scores, I would rate Adam 2.5 out of 5 on the AH scale, and OP gets a 0. My girlfriend wants me to unfollow a female influencer on social media, AITA, for refusing and breaking up with my GF? For context, in the past, my now ex-F had been cheated on via social media years ago. Her boyfriend at the time was talking to other women on Facebook behind her back, and when confronted, he essentially ignored it and acted like nothing happened. Additional context, there is a current social media influencer who I used to very publicly lust over, heart eyes, come home the kids miss you, the works. Although sometimes it would be business related trying to get her on my podcast, it didn't work out, so I just went back to be a regular follower of hers, liking pictures she would post and going about my day. So when my ex and I got together, all of those heart eyes and thirst comments for the influencer were done. She told me the Facebook story, and I reassured her multiple times throughout our relationship, 3 months, she was the only one for me, and that there is no other first name last name. There will never be another first name last name. You are the only one I want to be with. She sends me a voice message while I'm at work 2 weeks ago, going off about why I'm liking women's pictures that are dressing this way and thirst traps when you have a woman who does the same thing for you. I'm confused because I try to be careful about just ignoring stuff like that. On my Twitter, I've had it since I was a teenager, and these spots are in every comment section. My algorithm has been... But anyways, in my confusion, I ask what picture she's talking about. She sends me the influencer's picture that I liked from days ago, and she is fully dressed, covered up in a pink tracksuit or something. The first picture was a shot from the back, but the rest were just normal pictures of her. She says, I remember how you used to be drooling over her on the TL. If that's what you want, then go for it, and I will leave. I tell her it was mindless liking, and she was fully clothed, so I didn't think anything of it. But if it made her more comfortable, I wouldn't like her pictures anymore. She said, okay, and then apologized for giving me an ultimatum so early on about something that could have just been discussed. 2 weeks go by, she sends another voice message, asking why guys like pictures of women doing XYZ when they have a girl. I immediately sigh because I know where this is going. She then asks, "I'm just curious, why haven't you unfollowed that influencer yet?" I have had no contact with the influencer. I haven't liked anything, commented on anything, DMs her anything, bookmarked anything, joined a live stream, nothing since the initial conversation. She gets upset when I give her my answer of, because it's not that deep, social media is not a real place. There are hundreds of people who follow me but don't react with any of my posts and vice versa. I'm rarely on Instagram, and when I am, I just scroll and like. She claims it's disrespectful to her not doing what was asked of her to make her more comfortable, and brings up examples of how a couple of my associates followed her when we got together, but she didn't follow them back to make me more comfortable, which I didn't ask her to do. I just said one of them was a known whore and will probably try her. She said in the past that when she gets into a relationship, she would unfollow any dudes leaving thirst traps on her TL, and that's fine. I just don't think it's that deep. What matters most to me is how you interact with them in a relationship. You can look and like, but don't go, "Hey handsomer" on their stuff. TL, my ex-F, says I disrespected her by not unfollowing an influencer at her current request, when 2 weeks prior, the request was to simply stop liking their posts, which I stopped doing. I did not interact with the influencer in any way for the 2 weeks. Also, did I use the symbol correctly in the beginning? I don't remember much from kindergarten learning, so I keep trying to put it where I think it belongs. Edit. It's only been a few days, but I do miss her heavily. She was everything I was ever looking for in a woman. Every week we find something new about each other that we love and always wanted to share with someone, but I'm blocked off everything, and there's been no response to the last message sent. I want to at least be friends. It's not like someone was cheating or anything. Should I send her some flowers or something? Or just let it be? Edit 2. Guys, my ex isn't an influencer, and neither am I LOL. OP is not an AH for not unfollowing the said influencer. The problem is OP's girlfriend's past trauma, and because of now OP's ex was turning toxic, that is a point of concern for OP. As for advice, I would suggest OP to let it be and move on. Let's now move on to the next story from Pastel Deaths. AITA for not being attracted to the nice guy. 29F, got out of an abusive relationship about 2 years ago and have stayed focused on myself and healing. This last year, I went back to college and have been trying to focus on school, but I'm dabbling a bit with talking and dating. I won't go out of my way to go on dating apps, but if someone messages me / comes up to me, I won't turn them away. Recently, this super sweet guy messaged me on Insta, and we've been talking back and forth. He's really kind, caring, funny, and attentive. He's always asking questions and pays attention to what I say. He's into poetry, anime, and the gym. He's an ex-fat kid, so he's not judgmental either, and he has a very positive attitude. He currently doesn't work, but is taking care of his parents and going to school / working on being a personal trainer. Written down on paper, he's an amazing catch, which he truly is. The problem is that I'm just not attracted to him. Now, it's weird because I've never been one to date off of looks. It didn't matter if the guy was short, had messed up teeth, a receding hairline, or was a 3x4XL big boy. I always find myself attracted to who they are. But there's also always been a spark. Something about them that just lights a bit of a fire in me. I will say I have always been attracted to a more dominant personality. Unfortunately, this has led me to a lot of narcissistic jerks and bad boys. I spent the last 2 years trying to rebuild myself and my confidence that was destroyed by that type of person. We've gone out on one date, and he was a perfect gentleman. He brought me a small bouquet of flowers, opened the doors, kept attention on me, kept the conversation going, paid, and walked me to my car. He didn't press for a kiss or anything, but hugged me and told me he had an amazing time. When we text, we get along great, but honestly in person, I feel like I'm out on a date with my guy best friend that has a crush on me. I will say we are very different in some way. He's a stay-at-home, laid-back person who does the speed limit. Maybe 5 over LOL. I find it so innocent and adorable. He gives off a major nerdy vibe, but usually I love that. I'm a semi-nerd LOL. I like nerdy things, but I don't get super invested in any of them. I am always on the go and super social. I love to travel, and he said my speeds would scare him. My car stops me at 112. His music vibe is calm, and I'm more of a get up and go beat. IDK, maybe I'm reading into things just to find some reason as to why my DN doesn't like this guy. Looks-wise, he's not the cutest, but I'm also not a 10, so as I previously stated, I usually don't base my judgment off of looks. but I will say he's not my typical type. He's very dark. I usually go for white Puerto Rican types. He's short. I've only really dated one short person, and wasn't my favorite thing honestly, but also wasn't the reason me and that guy broke up. And he's really buff, which I like, but I've also been more into my thick teddy bear type of strong guy, not the muscular shredded dude. I'm not even sure if the looks are the issue. I just don't feel any kind of spark or excitement with him. Now he does kind of give off the weird guy who asks for a hug vibe. He's been in my DMs for a while now, even when I was with my ex, hence why I decided to give him a chance. But he does come off a little strong, even in person. But I'm a major overthinker, so once again, maybe I'm just trying to find some reason as to why I'm not into him. I was talking to my friends about what to do, and they're kind of split. I said I was going to talk to him still, and we can go on a second date. Maybe it was nerves, as the first date can be a lot on both ends, and I haven't been on a date in roughly 4-5 years. Maybe he will grow on me, but if by the second date I'm not interested, I will let him know, because I don't want to waste his time, and I feel like it would be messed up to keep dating him, to just see if maybe a spark might come. Some of my friends think this is a good idea. Some of them say it's wrong to go on a second date if I feel this way. A few friends are saying that I'm messed up in general for thinking of breaking it off with him since he's so great. They say that everyone always wants the nice guy, and I have him, so why would I break up with him over attraction? But wouldn't it be more messed up to just lead a guy on forever that I'm not attracted to? To me, I want the person I am with to be obsessed over me, and I over them. It feels like I'm settling and wasting both of our times if I keep going, plus why get him more attached just for things to possibly not change? AITA for not being attracted to the nice guy and ending things if I don't feel different after the second date? OP is not an AH for considering ending things with the so-called nice guy. He may be nice, but compatibility in a relationship is very important. If there is not compatibility, there are chances that the relationship would mess up finally. It's better to be honest and end it early than to lead the nice guy on without genuine romantic interest. Let's now jump on to the next story from unlikely_tradition38. AITA for ending a friendship because my ex-friend has no accountability or manners in someone's house? I, 34F, and her, 31F. For this story, I'll call her Bambi. Backstory. We went from co-worker to friends and dated for about 30 days. We broke up because I am poly, and she feels like non-monogamy's relationship or relationship with women ain't not serious. I made it clear the relationship I wanted, and that it was serious to me. She went along with it because IMO being with me is nice. I've paid for vacations, rent for her business, and helped organize events for her. She was dating a guy that was not serious according to her, but refused to acknowledge that we were together. I told her this was a deal breaker, and I was clear from the start what I wanted. She replied, I was just going to be in a relationship how I wanted and let you be in a relationship how you wanted. Meaning I was her girlfriend when she needed things, but not when I expected respect. I asked why did she not just say this to me, instead of leading me on. She stated I should have known, although she stated we were in a committed relationship that she meant a fake relationship. I stopped talking to her for a year, because she refused to apologize for leading me on, instead of telling me no. Fast forward to present day, I have elective surgery in Miami. I ask her to go because she can do my post-operation massages, and I know the money will help her as small business owner and single mom. Also, we had built up to a friendship over 7 years, so a 1-month relationship didn't have to be the end of us. I just needed time previously. I paid her a $1,000 to come with me and help after surgery. I also brought all the food, airfare, and lodging. She went to the store and stated she was going to go and come right back. Instead, she went to the beach, dropped her phone in the water, and met up with random people. This took a few hours. I asked her to please not lie, and just let me know her plans so I could plan accordingly. I chose not to take a shower before she left. I need help to, because she was coming right back. Instead, I didn't shower until very late at night. She stated that she did not lie, she just took a detour. I pointed out she packed a swimsuit and did a lot of things. I told her I didn't mind if she went out or had fun, just asked that she not say she would be back and actually making many stops. She yelled and screamed and said, I was mad she was with a guy. We are friends, and I am poly, I don't care. I've hung out with her and 2 different guys she dated numerous times, so that didn't make sense to me as accusation. Our Airbnb was a shared space in my name. A lovely couple with a 6-year-old daughter and pregnant wife was our host. I was mortified by the outburst in their home. I stopped talking to end the fight. Asked her if she could give me back half of the money I paid for future massages. She said no refunds. I said okay. She left to go smoke, and then came back screaming again that I owed her an apology for asking for a refund. I refused to. I booked another room and left to recover in peace. Our message? Me. Take your time, enjoy yourself, but next time do me a favor and don't lie. It's unnecessary. I'm good. Bambi, what I lie about now? Me. You said you were going and come straight back. You didn't. Bambi, what time did I leave? Me. You really don't have to come back, I'm fine. Bambi, I got here at 4:38. I got in the ocean, smoked, and was heading back, and he was like, let's smoke while I wait on my Uber. To me, I wasn't long. I didn't plan on being out any longer. I got sand all over me. It's a 40 minutes ride there and back. Me. Right, it's no sand in the dispensary. Bambi, it's no dispensary. Just relax, you on drug and moody. I'll see you shortly. I got the beach from South Beach. Me. Did you go get weed then come straight back? Yes or no? Bambi, sends pictures of weed. I'm not explaining myself. I can take a break. I'll see you shortly. Me. Didn't ask you to explain. I asked you not to lie. You can make a bunch of reasons and excuses to minimize why you lied. Doesn't change that you lied. Just letting you know that you don't have to, and you took a 40-minute ride, you could have stayed and enjoyed yourself. It's really not a big deal. Argument mentioned earlier happened. After she stormed off, I left. Bambi. So, you pack all your stuff and left and didn't tell me? But I decide to enjoy the beach while I go get Bud. And that was a problem. I was called a liar. Knowing you're drugged up and being very irrational, you pack all your stuff up, carry all your by yourself, just to prove a dumb point that's still not proven. What you trying of make it seem like you left me? This will be the last and final time you will ever make it seem like you left me. Cutthroat and not to be trusted. That's what Ima calls you. You don't leave nobody out of state, period. You did this in Georgia, thank God I live near, and now in Miami, and I don't have my flight info bet. Me. You feel like how you communicate with me is okay. I don't. You lack accountability in my opinion, but you don't in yours. We can agree to disagree. I have no desire to be in an argument, nor be around someone, and it be nothing but negative energy. You have been walking around Miami by yourself, and you were fine, so acting like you are stranded is crazy. I left you with money, a free room, and I did not cancel your flight. I'll text it to you when check-in is available, probably around 8 p.m. Yeah, I'm so cutthroat. Cutthroat that I paid for your flight, food, room. Deciding not to stay in a room with you is not doing anything to you. Enjoy your day, go out, have fun, go to the beach. All I did was choose my peace. I don't owe you my presence. Bambi, you do know all this energy came from you, nothing but bad energy. All because I left to get Bud. In your eyes, I didn't come back because I got the Bud and decided to take a break and enjoy myself. BWF you though, I was supposed to do. Sit in the room and stare at you all day. Girl, please, I never told you I was coming to be a slave and not have me some me time. I even told you I planned on getting in the water and eating Cuban food. All this because I took 2 hours out my MF day. I was supposed to go to the beach and not go enjoy the water, just grab the Bud and come back and watch you sleep. You act like you was hurt and needed me. I asked, was everything okay? You said, yeah, I'm fine. Hell, you like fine on FaceTime. Like, this is funny. I was gone for 2 hours. I can't make this up. I'm a TikTok this. Yes, cutthroat. I will never with you again. You're dead to me. Bipolar and always want to take your aggression out on others. Cut you mad at your niggas? Everything that you have gave to me, I have gave it back to you. You don't owe me, and I don't owe you me. I pray that at some point you grow enough to be able to accept accountability for what you do wrong instead of playing victim. Have a blessed day, AITA. OP is not an AH for breaking friendship with his ex-friend and setting boundaries with her. OP did his best to help her friend, but he was always met with disrespect and outburst from her. In this situation, OP's decision to prioritize his mental peace was the only way forward. And OP did nothing wrong by prioritizing his mental peace. So, I would rate OP 0 and OP's ex-friend 3.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now move on to the next story from strange_d_ja_vu, AITA for not putting up with my mother's bad behavior. 46 and my mother, 73F, had emotionally manipulated myself and my brothers and sister ever since our father died some 30 years ago. We were all kids when he died, and none of us ever got any sort of professional help to deal with the situation, and being so young, had no idea that her style of upbringing from then on was anything but normal. Now we are all adults, and some of us have had counseling. It's been easy to pinpoint various issues of manipulation my mother has done to control us. Recently, we have become aware that my mother potentially suffers from some sort of social anxiety. I can't say for sure that is what it is. Prior to the pandemic, she was employed in hospitality in 2 jobs which she enjoyed. She didn't need to keep working. She was already able to retire comfortably. She had been looking for a new dog since her last one had recently passed away, so I made a deal that I would help her get the dog she was after if she retired. She agreed, and so it happened. She quit one job, but kept a part-time one she works at on the weekends. My siblings and I would frequently invite her to gatherings, BBQs, etc. And she started to use the dog as an excuse because she could not attend. I can't leave the dog in its own, she needs me, etc., etc. A couple of years ago, she had a fall at work and broke/fractured her knee. She was in a moon boot for some time and unable to work, and was put on some sort of workers' compensation due to the incident happening while she was working. Fast forward to last year, she started using both the dog and now her health as an excuse to get out of any social activities. Her health has started to deteriorate recently due to the injury she sustained, but she has done next to nothing to try and help herself and recover. She constantly plays up how bad the injury and her health are to us all, to the point now where my brothers back her up, as though she is some sort of invalid who is dying. This last year, there have been some incidents that have annoyed me greatly. I got engaged and organized an engagement party. Straight away when it was announced, she started whining about how far away the party was. It was an hour away near to where I live, and my brothers or sister would have given her a lift. The day before the party, she conveniently claimed she tested positive to COVID. Recently, I needed to get some servicing done to my car near her place. I asked well in advance if I could possibly stay the night at her place and get her to drive me there to drop the car off and then back again to pick it up later in the day whilst working the day at her place. She reluctantly agreed. Then 2 days before, she called me telling me she couldn't do it as her dog was sick. Her dog was fine. We had spoken on the phone all week, and she was telling me how the dog had been sicking the previous week, but was now over whatever illness it had. She then called me back a few hours later, had forgotten the excuse she gave me, and told me she had to cancel, as she had had a fall, and was too bruised to be able to drive me anywhere. I couldn't cancel the appointment, as I would have incurred a $300 fee. A few months later, I was due to get married. My mother called me to tell me she was not going to stay in town near the wedding venue, again 1 hour from where she lived, like most of our family and friends, as she could not leave the dog on her own for so long, a length of 24 hours. She informed me she was hiring a chauffeur driving car to pick her up on the night. I was far from impressed and let her know. She then proceeded to use her health again as an extra excuse, saying she could not be on her feet for an extended amount of time, even though there were plenty of seating placed around the venue. On the day of my wedding, she informed me she would be leaving an hour earlier and told me she didn't want to tell me earlier because she knew it would have annoyed me. Then during the last couple of hours leading up to her departure, she spent that time pestering me to ready my son to leave with her, all whilst my wife and I were trying to do our formalities, leaving a bad mark on the night that should have been the happiest night of our lives. The final incident happened in the lead-up to Xmas last year. My sister and her partner planned to spend Xmas with his family in another state. Therefore, she would not be attending our usual family Xmas. We planned a gathering with the family earlier with a date that would suit everyone. We purposely did not tell my mother until the week leading up to the gathering, as we knew it would give her too much time to come up with another one of her excuses. Apparently, it was way too much time, as she managed to change a doctor's appointment for a very routine procedure from the week following the gathering to the day before the gathering. This caused a fight in the family. My sister and I were beyond annoyed and conveyed this to our brothers. They backed up our mother, saying, "She's old, she's not well. She may be old and not in the greatest of health, but she also could have waited to see the doctor for the appointment the following week." We believe she deliberately moved the appointment to have an excuse as to why she would not be attending. Mind you, the procedure she was having was a day before the gathering and would have given her ample time for any recovery. I called her up a week later, and she proceeded to abuse me for not calling her to check how she was after her procedure. I told her I was annoyed at her behavior, to which she replied and hung up on me. I have put up with this behavior for many years now, and I am no longer prepared to deal with it any further. This ruined Xmas for myself and my family, especially my son, who will now miss out on hanging out with his cousins and opening presents from my mum. AITA here? OP is not the AH, and he has endured years of manipulation and emotional strain from his mother, who avoids accountability and disrupts family events. OP's decision to set boundaries to protect his well-being and family relationships is both reasonable and necessary. He did nothing wrong here. As for OP's mum, she is an AH, and I would rate her 3.5 out of 5 on the AH scale, and OP gets a 0. Let's now move on to the next story from annual_brain_4722. AITA for having turned into a self-perceiving I, 30M, my dad, 50M, has NPD. He swears at me, hits me, in front of my very young kids, spouse, and mother, countless times. Regrettably, I cuss back, a few times now, and have also had to physically defend myself by also hitting back, which I wholeheartedly regret, as perhaps the best way to handle would have been silence and walking away. This time, again he responded by cursing and cussing my wife, and I, repeatedly blaming her for bringing the change in his household, that is, my behavior, and blaming her for the death of my grandpa, who we loved a lot, and he loved my wife and I very much, which took place several years ago. He blames her dark energy for that in his fit of rage, noting how my mother-in-law, wife's mother, and other females of my wife's family ate away the good people of their own respective families due to their dark energy. Even though I cussed back and also tried to comfort my wife, she is as sad as. He is, or I am, or my mother is. It's not the first time, and some internet experts may argue that he is mentally unwell. You would never see him this way, even if you knew him as an outsider for decades, as he would preach and instill goodness in you. He does not have a bad heart, I feel, but in his rage says things that are simply terrible. My relationships are only spiraling downward, ongoing past several years, and my mother is too scared to get him to see his folly. She has adopted the approach and encourages my wife and I to do the same, to let him do what he wants, try to ignore and pray, and to enjoy our lives happily together. However, it is easier said than done, even if he was not vividly present in our life because of how damaged I truly am. After 3.5 decades of existence, I am seeking professional help to no avail, which has been nothing short of garbage. That is, gone to therapy, undergoing psychiatric treatment, etc. But I don't trust anyone, not even you guys reading it. We live together, it is a cultural thing, and more like a necessity, as I cannot afford a place on my own. If we were to move out, it would be a big insult and humiliation to our family name too. But more importantly, I am going through health difficulties, and my spouse manages 2 young kids, so the financial issues are ever growing. The little money I receive is not enough for us to move out, nor is it permanent. We don't ask parents for money and contribute towards gas, groceries, smaller bill payments, etc. I lost a huge amount of money in the stock market, particularly AMC stock, still holding apes, with my life savings gone, and having leveraged, he also bailed me out and definitely helped financially, something he taunts me with at every chance he gets. Note that you can never repay your parents, but I also had paid him previously, and did pay him a portion after too. We do share finances as well, but in my teens, he had paid off my student debt and also put me through school, undergrad, and even grad for university, etc. I also had a bunch of scholarships. He also paid for our lavish wedding, which is how he wanted it. We are by no means rich. He works hard for every single dollar, and is frugal towards spending for himself and lavish towards spending for my mother, wifey, home, or kids. He is practical towards myself, which I appreciate. However, he repeatedly insults me, and although he loves the kids in his own very loving, caring, and gentle way, his way is clearly getting in the way of our parenting, as he often investigates where we took them to eat, or what we bought, or gives then little incentives to make sure they stay loyal towards him and also goes as far as telling them that he is going to God or go very far away if they don't listen to him. He is using the same love scare tactics he used on me to draw the kids to love, care, and listen to him over us, which drives my wife nuts. In all honesty, he does love them very much and would give up his existence for them in a heartbeat. While interactions with myself, spouse, and kids are starting to be more limited, they are still there, unavoidable, and I also don't want them to end but want him to definitely change, which will never happen. We have talked several times about our issues, making attempts to trying to understand or even addressing, but we don't get anywhere as he always finds a common enemy, that is, a devil, such as my lack of control on my speech or my attitude, for simplicity, in trying to get us to behave such way towards each other. No boundaries are ever respected, nor will they ever be. It comes down to, don't tell your parents how to make babies. Or, have you grown up so much that you will teach me how to behave? Or other such foolishly tactics. He has, at times, acknowledged that he is wrong, and that the best way for me to tackle him during the heat of the moment is to simply stay quiet and at a later time, acknowledge and review with him. I tried this approach, not nearly to a perfection, but failed miserably. Also, I am too weak now to simply absorb, and cannot help but feel compelled to either respond or engage reluctantly. He is not open to therapy and has criticized me countless times for trying to seek help, calling me unmanly in front of my spouse, kids, and mother several times. I always trusted him with everything, but things have gone from bad to worse now. Throughout my life, I can count countless examples of him showering me with love and countless more of him putting me down sometimes, justifying to get me life ready. I genuinely believe that everything I have is because of God's grace and my elders' blessings and prayers. However, my mother in the past, later my wife, and now I sincerely can't help but question his intent. He cheated on my mother several times, and when I confronted him, he simply brushed it off as if I'm supposed to look out for him. Though my mother is very well aware of it, I did not tell her and always defended him. She is no longer bothered by this, especially because he now faces health issues. She sincerely believes that someone has cursed our family, or there is evil eye, etc. in play, but also acknowledges that my dad's behavior has always been very difficult. My dad and I both fought each other countless times, only to make up after. As a child, it used to be the same day, as a teen usually the same week, and now sometimes even a month plus of no talking to each other, all while residing in the same house. But his narcissistic behavior and my bad experiences are constantly conflicting with the good ones, I recall, and have caused me to unknowingly have a part of him ingrained within me, my behavior, and tearfully, my actions. I definitely blame him for causing me health issues. Sadly, I simply do not have the courage to work currently with my finances and health being real issues. Everyone, including his own mother, my grandma, has wept because of his actions and his cruel speech and expressed their dislike towards his behavior and personality. But they, other family members such as my aunt, his sister, all chose to simply ignore his personality, not him, rationalizing to me that he is a good guy deep down and only means well. Even I try to ignore but fail because I am too weak. Deep down though, I love him so much, and I know he loves me too. I can tell. It has become unbearably difficult to simply walk away, forget, or I'm afraid, forgive myself. He hates that I am staying at home, off from work, and getting peanuts from government. But even when I was working full-time with a decent job, it was no better. We would often argue, fight, and insult each other. Just did not want to separate away from each other because somehow still feel connected, and would later discuss how weird and abnormal it would be for everyone if we were to stay apart. Few years ago, I did leave home with my kids and spouse, as he repeatedly yelled at my spouse and myself to get out with our kids, calling her a loser for marrying me, and also calling her lazy, unemployed in front of our kids, my mother and my grandma, who timidly asked him to stop, and in private, encouraged me to leave with their blessings. My spouse cried a lot after his insults. My dad had taught me that a man never lets his wife shed tears, so I took the step of moving out. However, we ended up returning home because he called me to say that he will behave better, and also apologized to my spouse, who he has shown a lot of affection towards and a lot of respect in front of non-family, and also noted how my mother had suddenly fainted. Deep down, I knew it was not practical for us to move out even then. 2 very young kids, a spouse who had just come out of pregnancy, and only one source of income, whereby I was also on a paternity leave, along with COVID scares accompanied by my mother's tears. I blame him for feeling disrespected by everyone, including my spouse and little kids calling my names, which they learnt from him and do not even understand the meanings behind. Not listening to me, nor behaving nicely with me, etc. Also, seeing my wife not listen to me and having physically grown distant from me, as her mind is surrounded by my dad's insults. Recently, he provoked me again. I got angry, cursed at my own self, to which he further responded by cursing me to die, not the first time, while yelling and cussing my wife, mother, and I. Further, he shared numerous examples of his personal interactions with my spouse, noting how she also calls me names like psycho, mad, etc. My spouse denies this outright, and while I don't trust my dad and have doubts about my wife because of how much he lies, and due to my life experiences in general, he swore that those interactions were very real. My spouse totally hates him and feels that the good he did have simply been efforts to buy the love and respect, but the bad he does outweigh everything else. He often cusses at her family for not being respectful towards him, in that they did not treat him with as much respect as he did, and also called my spouse all sorts of vulgarities in front of me. I obviously let out a lot back at him, and for the first time, also heard my wife slightly raise her voice back at him, which was mildly infuriating, just because she usually stays quiet. So he showed no shame in going all out crazy in his fit of rage. Sadly, and unknowingly, I feel that I may have adopted some of his ways, and only realize how terrible I have become as a person afterwards, such as raising my voice, and also having sudden fits of rage, but that is also because of my health issues. In his sane state, even he pointed out that I should raise my kids different compared to how he raised me, that is, not show aggression, and instead adapt more modern methods of parenting as opposed to the traditional whoop your or my way or the highway approach, but I have been totally unsuccessful and impatient. I know the best way is not to let him control my thoughts, actions, and consciousness, however I feel so much weaker now. I have been raised and firmly believe in God, and also in never ever disrespecting your parents, but feel lost and cannot seem to control. I am struggling so much, health, relationships, finances. Even my prayers are not working, perhaps because I disrespected my parents? Am I truly My mother says that I shouted and said too much, and that I should have some shame as he is my father. My wife says that I am not at wrong. My grandma says that she is ashamed overall, and I feel guilty. OP is not the AH for defending themselves and their family against their father's abusive behavior. While OP's responses may not always be ideal, and for this OP is a little bit AH, but OP's father's ongoing toxicity, manipulation, and lack of accountability leave OP in an impossible situation. As for scores, I would rate OP's father 3.5 out of 5 on the AH scale, and OP gets 0.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. AITA. For telling my roommate not let in her boyfriend, who is a meth addict and has been involved in pipe bomb explosions. My best friend, 21F, and I, 23NB, decided to move in with each other in August. A boundary that I set since the beginning is that I don't want meth in any iteration in our house. She has been talking to this guy for a little over a month now, and he seemed nice enough at first, until she told me that he has offered her meth multiple times. She tells me this isn't a big deal, because he's a recovering addict who has been clean as far as she knows. He didn't have meth on him when he asked her if she wanted to use with him, and this is just how addicts are. Then the day she brought him over, she told me that he was making pipe bombs, threw one out of his home window, causing the house to shake and car alarms to go off, and then tried to teach her how to make them. After I called her out, she told me that she was being overdramatic at the time, and that it wasn't a pipe bomb, and was actually a firework, but I have a hard time believing this because of the surrounding statements she made. Side note. My initial reaction was very angry and unkind, and I said some things that hurt her. I genuinely regret this, and I apologized. I should have put the phone away until I was calm, but I had a hard time doing this because she woke me up at midnight and then kept me up with the noise before I had to wake up at 4 a.m. for my morning shift. When I asked her who she had over, she joked, I figured this way there would be no. This was a big trigger for my emotional and unkind reaction. Now her rebuttal to me was that I don't have the right to tell her who she can have over since we both pay rent. And he hasn't done any of the concerning behavior in our house, so I have nothing to worry about. She has called me manipulative for using the word boundary, that I'm trying to control who she can hang out with, and that I'm using her words against her. I genuinely don't understand this. She only said I was using her words against her when I brought up how she told me she experienced cravings when he offered her meth, and I haven't tried to tell her to stop seeing him. I've advised her against it as a friend, especially since she is also a recovering addict who is currently on probation. But when it comes to me not wanting him in our house, my reasoning is for specifically my safety. Basically, I need someone who is not biased towards me to give it to me straight. Am I being manipulative? And if not, am I overreacting? OP is not the AH for prioritizing their safety and setting boundaries about a meth-using, pipe bomb-making individual. Their concerns are valid and reasonable, especially since their roommate's actions could jeopardize both safety and legal consequences for them. As for scores, I would rate OP's roommate 3.5 and OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump onto the next story from flashy_bat_3443. AITA for agreeing to separate from my wife when she brought it up for the 4th time, and then sticking to it when she subsequently changed her mind? Me, 40M, and my wife, 37F, have been together for 10 years, and we have 2 boys, 8 and 5. Recently, things have been tough. I think we had both withdrawn from each other gradually over time, without really noticing that it had happened. We were sleeping in separate bedrooms, primarily her choice. She was sleeping in late most days, particularly at the weekend, and I was doing a lot of activities with the kids without her. I work, and she doesn't. Never had a problem with it, and was happy to support her, but I was getting up every day to get the kids ready for school. Sometimes she would roll out of bed and take them while I got ready for work. Sometimes she wouldn't, and I would just take them. Similar routine at bedtime. I would put the kids to bed, read them stories, etc., and get them to sleep. Happy to do it. The 3 of us would do things together at the weekends without her, particularly in the mornings. She wasn't completely absent, but it got to the point where the kids were making comments about it, saying, "Why does Mum never want to come with us? Why is she sleeping all the time?" So I suppose I was becoming more withdrawn and emotionally separate, and she was too. She would sit and scroll through her phone, or watch TikTok in the evenings after the kids were in bed. We weren't connecting as we used to. Then came the angry outbursts over seemingly trivial things. An Amazon order turned up while I was out that she didn't know about, and my phone was blown up over it. I didn't reply to a text quickly enough while I was at work, and she would rant about it for an hour or 2. My family would come out to visit us. We live abroad. And she would ask at the last minute that they stay in a hotel instead of at our house. To be fair, she suffers from anxiety, and I have tried repeatedly to get her to have therapy for it. She gets medication from the doctor, but that's as far as she seems to want to go to try and resolve things. So I have been as supportive as I can be, listening to all the past traumas, etc., but knowing that they weren't really being solved or dealt with. You can't make someone go to therapy. I only encouraged her as much as I could. The angry outbursts started getting more frequent, and historically, I would always try and placate her as much as possible, to keep the peace. But I started getting a little defensive about it, and standing up for myself, which really started escalating things. Just pushing back. A little bit. That is saying, no, my family cannot book a hotel 24 hours before they are supposed to stay with us, which we agreed to months ago, led to several claims that she was going to leave me, that I had changed, and I wasn't the person she married anymore, etc. After several episodes of this, where she even told our oldest son that we were divorcing about 60 seconds after she told me, upsetting him greatly, she did it again about a week ago. I decided that I would take a stand, and I agreed with her, said that she was right, and we should separate. She went to bed early, and we didn't talk all night. The next morning, she was hoping for my usual rapprochement, but I said that you made it clear how you felt last night, and so I was sticking to it. The last week has been torture, because now apparently I am responsible for throwing the whole marriage away. It is 100% my decision, and I haven't given her a chance to change anything. She doesn't want to split and will love me forever, etc. I feel so guilty about it, but I honestly do not see how things will change at all, and it feels like something broke inside me, and I just cannot get myself to feel anything anymore. I definitely accept that we could and should have communicated more in the weeks and months leading up to this, but on the other hand, it also feels that every time I tried to bring anything up, she would be immediately defensive and/or try and twist it around to be my fault anyway. So now, I'm sticking to my guns. I don't see a way forward from here, but I'm still racked with guilt about it all. She definitely thinks that I am the AH here. OP is not an AH for being responsible for the breakdown of his relationship with his wife. OP's wife is an AH for blaming OP instead of admitting that her anxiety is the biggest cause of this breakdown. OP did nothing wrong, and his reaction is completely justified. So, I would rate OP's wife 3.5 and OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now move on to the next story from Few-Fisherman 4526. AITA for cutting my sister off after years of her disrespect, and I finally had enough when she was rude to my partner. I 21F moved in with my dad when I was 16. I started living with my dad, stepmom, and stepsister, 13 at the time. Let's call her Tiff. Everything was fine at first. No problems with anyone at all. In the beginning, I got along with Tiff. As a few months passed, things started getting rocky. She slowly started with guilt, tripping me to do things. As more time passed, she started with yelling at me, calling me names, trying anything to get me in trouble. After a while it stopped, and we started to get along again. We moved houses when I was 17, and she was 14. Tiff started getting in trouble with our parents. She tried to blame small things on me, like not cleaning the bathroom when it wasn't my turn. At this point, she started yelling at me again, calling me names again, and started to make rude comments about my body. Our parents tried to punish her for it, but it never worked. Tiff and I started fighting all the time because I had enough of it. But no matter what, it was always my fault. Our parents said Tiff was just having some mental issues and to be nice. I tried to be nice and remain calm. All this continued even after I turned 18. I moved to a different state to live with some family for a year. Me and Tiff seemed to fix things and become friends again. I moved back in with my dad after that year. Things were fine for like the first 2 months back. Tiff was still under 18 and got mad that I could come and go as I pleased. She slowly started being rude and disrespectful again. Tiff started judging for every little thing I did, along with everything else she had been doing. Tiff also started being disrespectful to my partners. I left a lot of people because of her. At the same time, she also started treating me like her mom. She wanted money all the time. She had to do everything with me. After a while, I got my stepmom's old car. It was used but still in good condition. I learned about some issues it was having after I took the car over. I didn't stress about them and made sure to let my parents know, so they knew I wasn't causing them. They told me it had been having some issues and not to worry. About 8 months ago, I met my partner 21M, let's call him John. After hanging out with John and explaining what was happening at home, he offered me to move in. His partners were also offering me to move in as well. We started dating shortly after. I took him to meet all my family after some time. Tiff ignored him unless there was a group conversation going on. She wouldn't even introduce herself to him. John tried to be friendly, but she could care less. About a month later, I got a new car. My old one went back to my stepmom, who gave it to Tiff. After a while, Tiff started blowing up my phone, saying I had to pay to fix everything wrong with the car. I told her I would fix the trunk because my friend had broken it. But I refused to fix anything else because it was issues that had been going on since before. I got the car. She started talking bad about me to our family and started saying that I didn't care about my family and that I was a piece of crap. I ignored her and just continued on with my life. She started telling everyone that I wouldn't talk to her or our parents. But she was the only one that wouldn't talk to me. Or if she did, she didn't care about me and only wanted to talk about herself. After a while, she started calling John a piece of crap and that he was controlling and toxic. She also started calling him all kinds of names. So AITA for cutting her off after I had enough of her crap? Small update? I blocked Tiff on everything but her number a month or 2 ago. I only have her number unblocked, but it's muted. I kept the number unblocked in case something happened to our parents and I need to know. I talked to John about not going to holidays at my dad's. I feel bad for my dad and stepmom because they're getting punished for her actions, but I don't know what else to do. I don't want to go and just hate being there because it will affect our parents. OP is not an AH for going no contact with her younger sister. OP's sister is an AH for being rude and disrespectful towards OP for years. OP made a great decision to cut her sister off from her life. OP did nothing wrong, and her reaction is completely justified. So I would rate OP's sister 2.5 and OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump on to the next story from Communication Fast 987. Are me and my sister Ta H for trying to defend myself against my brother, but ultimately ended up riling him up? My family consists of me, 17F, my sister, 14F, my little brother, 7M, and my mother, 45F. For some context to this, my brother has autism alongside ADHD, and I have ADHD, so we often have clashed as I get overwhelmed, and he's hyperactive. He often comes barging into our rooms, so much so that my room and my sister's room doors are broken and no longer shut properly. My brother often has blowout/tantrums when we don't cooperate with what he and only he wants. Whether we already gave him attention or played with him for hours doesn't change anything. Today, he came into my room and began flicking my light switch off and on and swinging my door open constantly, which can become irritating after the trillionth time. So naturally, I tried closing my door slightly, not all the way because I don't even have the option to do so anymore. This causes him to have a blowout, where he starts throwing his toys at me, wrecking my bedsheets, and knocking over my room furniture, chair, fan, etc. Eventually, my mom comes out to see what's going on, and immediately starts accusing me and my sister of riling him up, when all I did was reject his offer and try to stop him from wrecking my entire room. At this point, the whole family is in the lounge, my sister at the dining table as my mom stands by her, and I'm leaning against the wall by my room. My brother alternates between me and my sister as he begins throwing and hitting us with his toy, knowing mom won't punish him as she tells us to just ignore him. I tried to, but I couldn't stand there as she let him hit me and my sister. So I grabbed his toy and threw it outside through the backyard door. He starts screaming bloody as if I had just his non-existent firstborn, and he starts punching and kicking me. I try to go to my room, but he follows me and makes another gigantic mess of it. This is when my sister started asking my mom to do something, as she just stood there, which my mom replied with, "Honestly, I don't care anymore. He's going to continue and I can't do anything about it." My sister tells my mom she can always do something, like taking the toy off him, but this is just disregarded by my mother. I then come to sit at the dining table, and I'm so overwhelmed with anger and sadness that I start crying and my mom goes on her whole, "Oh, we all have it hard, it's okay my daughter" speech. Of course, I know we do, and I didn't even say anything about us not. But this just pulled at me and my sister's last straw, as mom continued to let him hit us. She then made a pathetic attempt at shielding us by scooting over slightly and once again standing still. We then have a conversation that goes something like this. "Why are you letting him hit us, little sister? I told you to just ignore him." Mom, how are we meant to ignore someone who is hitting us? Me. She then begins to go on a whole rant about how we are ganging up on her and about how we should defend ourselves. We tell her that when we do defend ourselves, you tell us to stop giving him a reaction, Exhibit A, being me throwing his toy away as he hit us with it, and then question her as to why she can't take the object he is using to hurt us away. This time it was a toy, yeah, but other times it may be a chair or a rod he pulled out of thin air, or even his phone. She tries to threaten us by saying she'll call his psychologist so we can explain this all to her, but me and my sister are genuinely open to the idea, as we aren't afraid to tell the psychologist what's going on at home. My mom starts laughing, saying we are trying to make her the bad guy, and starts walking off, not having responded to any of the points we had made. My sister and I ultimately went back to our rooms, my right arm covered in scratches and red from where my brother punched me. Another point to add is that whenever my brother does have a blowout like this, our mom usually tells him that she'll give him some candy in order for him to stop hurting everyone. My sister and I have called her out multiple times, saying that this is ultimately rewarding him, as he can link that bad behavior will always result in him winning, whether it be me and my sister getting in trouble or him getting a treat. I understand that my brother is 7, but I feel like a lot of his behavior alongside his neurological disorders are being enforced by our mother, whether she realizes it or not. Overall, There could have been some things I've missed as I was very overwhelmed, and in our households, this honestly has become a daily occurrence. Even while typing this out, my shoulder hurts so bad that I can't even find a comfortable position to lay in. So, are me and my sister the AH in this situation? Even if you think we are, what are some tips you may have that could be useful in this situation? OP is not an AH for defending herself from her toxic brother. OP's brother is an AH for being physically aggressive towards OP and her sisters. OP's mother is also an AH for not taking a stand for them. So, I would rate OP's mother 2.5, OP's brother 3.5, and OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now move on to the next story, from broad_Sir 556. AITA for telling my niece about emancipation? My 39F Silan 43F is telling me that I am the asshole for telling my 15-year-old niece Jane what emancipation is. Context: Jane got hospitalized for self-harm. I got to visit her along with my 17-year daughter Lynn while she was in the hospital. When I got there, I asked Jane how she was doing. She said, "I just can't go home." We sat and talked for about an hour. I told her we loved her, that we were concerned for her, asked her what she needed and how we could help. My biggest thing was, I wanted her to know she was not alone and that I understood where she was at. In my teen years, I struggled with depression and tried to kill myself several times. I also had an abusive home life and realized later in life that most of my depression was related to that. Knowing that Jane didn't know any of that, I told her my story. Later that weekend, I saw Anne. I tried to talk with Anne and tell her what Jane and I talked about. With Jane's permission, I told her that Jane said she needed space and didn't want to come home. I told her that Jane is always welcome in our home and that even if she doesn't stay with us, it would probably help Jane to have somewhere else to go. Anne didn't seem like she could handle the conversation, or that she flat out didn't want to have it, nodding, giving half smiles, avoiding eye contact. I knew she probably had a lot of her own feelings she was dealing with and didn't go into too much detail because of that. We talked in the phone later that night. Anne had a question about Jane that I answered, and that tied into what I had tried discussing earlier. I again tried to gently have the conversation, but didn't press it. Fast forward to 2 months later, Anne hasn't been talking to my family and said that she needed space to focus on hers. Totally understandable. Lynn had a conversation with Anne where she told Lynn that she had a few questions for my husband, 40M, Thomas and I. Thomas reached out. Anne responded that she had questions for me. Anne texted me later and said, "What were the discussion questions asked at the hospital when Jane said she couldn't go home? I have an answer from her, but I would like to give you a chance to answer." I knew that I had already had this conversation with her 2X, so I knew she was looking for something else more specific. I responded with, "Sure, what is the specific question you have around that conversation?" Anne, "That was my question. Around the time she said she can't go home? What were you saying or asking her?" Me, "There seems to a lot more behind this line of questioning, more than what can be discussed over text." Anne, "I just want to know if it's true or not." Me, "I'm not doing this over text. If you would like to have a real conversation with me, I am open to that." Anne, "I'm going to take that as a yes, even if there is more to it than you can share via text." Me, "You're going to assume what you're going to assume. Again, I'm willing to have conversations, but not over text. Since I already set that boundary and you didn't respect it, I'm putting you on silence, and I'm not going to respond to this line of conversation. You can reach out when you're ready to have an in-person conversation." That was 6 months ago. Again, I understand that Anne has a lot on her plate right now, so that's fine. In those 6 months, a family member has unfriended me on Facebook, and another family member has asked if we called CPS on Anne and her husband. So, Anne is talking about it to others, and not us directly. Over the holiday, Anne texted Lynn to tell us Happy Thanksgiving. We reached out and said to not put Lynn in the middle, and Anne could reach out to us directly. It opened the subject up again, as Anne said she hadn't received an answer to her question about emancipation. I hadn't answered because we were giving her the space she asked for. If you've held on this far, here is what I said about emancipation. From what I can remember, towards the end of our conversation, not in the initial portion when Jane first told us she couldn't go home. Lynn asked Jane if she had made any friends in the hospital. Jane was talking about her friends, and brought up who one friend was arranging to go live somewhere else after their stay ended. Jane said again, "I can't go home. I wish I could live with you guys." I said, "You are always welcome in our home, but that ultimately is not up to me. It was up to your mom and dad." She asked me to talk with them about living with me. That is when I shared my story with her, to empathize, to let her know that she wasn't alone, that I understood where she was coming from, that I had dealt with depression and had tried to kill myself several times. I stated that my home life was rough, that I went to live with a friend. This is where emancipation was brought up. I brought it up in the context of my story, that I was looking into emancipating myself. I assumed she knew what emancipation was. I assumed this because she was in a group therapy session talking with other people about how to not go back to their living situations. That is where and how I learned about emancipation. I did see her eyes light up and realized she thought that would be applicable to her and her situation. I explained the many ways our situations were different. I was driving and paying for everything but rent and some food already. I had 2 stable jobs, etc. I even explained that parents and courts would have to sign off on a minor being emancipated. I highlighted that it was not a probable solution to her problem. I feel even if I hadn't brought it up, she would probably have learned about emancipation in her group therapy setting. It's just a common topic. I feel that me telling her my story was not me presenting her with options. It was just me telling her my story and empathizing with her. The conversation was not about what can we do to get you away from your parents. The conversation was, what do you need? How can we help you? How can we support you? I did not walk in, sit down, look at Jane and say, you can legally become an adult at 15 as long as your mom and dad sign off on it. Okay, Reddit, AITA? OP is not an AH for consoling her niece and discussing her traumas. OP's sister-in-law is an AH for accusing her and questioning her intentions. OP did nothing wrong. She shows empathy and concern towards her niece, nothing else. So, I would rate OP's sister-in-law 2.5 and OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump on to the next story from Alaska. _is tired. AITA for going near no contact with my father, even if I know he cares a lot about me and is just mentally ill. My father was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and is a pathological liar. When my parents divorced, I was 6. I started living 1 week at my mom's and 1 week at my dad's. The divorce caused, or that's my theory anyway, a very bad hit to my father's, already fragile, mental health. He stopped taking his medication for bipolar disorder and started self-medicating with alcohol and drugs, opioids, weed, and maybe other things. His depressive episodes, combined with his alcoholism and drug addiction, caused him to neglect me physically. When I was at my father's house, I barely ate. Sometimes I didn't eat anything for 2 days because he was always passed out or high, wasn't hungry, and wasn't cooking or buying any food. That went on until I was 14, when I started working and could drive a scooter to buy my own food. The house was also very unsanitary, utterly disgusting. There was mold, old food, dirty dishes, drugs, dirt, and trash everywhere. He also smoked cigarettes in the house, so everything smelled like smoke. That caused me a lot of bullying in primary school because my clothes smelled like cigarettes were never clean, and I wasn't taking showers since using the filthy shower disgusted me too much. When I entered high school, I forced myself to start taking showers and developed a plan. I would bring all my clothes to my mom's, wash everything there, put the clean clothes in a closed bag, and only open it when I needed something while at my dad's house. I think that helped with the cigarette odor. There were also moments when I feared for my life because he would drive me to school drunk. We had a couple of accidents, but we never died. Yay. I also stopped having a proper relationship with him around the age of 9. The alcoholism and drugs changed him a lot, and that scared me. Particularly when I would find him passed out on the floor, which happened a lot. And like I said earlier, he's a pathological liar, so it was difficult to have a proper conversation without him lying about random things and frustrating me. Although I knew I hated living with him, I couldn't bring myself to live full-time at my mom's. I knew he loved me very much. I also knew I was the only good thing in his life. He didn't have any friends or family. I couldn't do that to him. I never talked about the neglect or anything else to my mom or anyone else until I was 17. Why? Because my father had a stroke. One day, my father had a stroke. Apparently, he had symptoms months before, like his legs hurting a lot. But he was always too drunk and high to bring himself to go to the hospital. The doctors told us at first that he wouldn't make it. So my mom went to his house to throw away food that would go bad and find his insurance and hospital card. That's when she saw the state of his house and forced me to tell her everything. I didn't tell her everything, but I did tell her that he was always drunk or high. Then he miraculously survived, but they said he'd be completely paralyzed and barely conscious. Another miracle happened though. He's not paralyzed at all. The only lasting issue is that his brain works much slower now, if that makes sense. What he says doesn't always make sense, and he has difficulty understanding us sometimes. It's honestly heartbreaking. My father was far from perfect, but he was so damn smart. Terrifyingly smart. He was a top computer engineer at a big company and managed to stay on top even though he was never sober. And now he's so slow and clueless. I know that sounds harsh, but it's just the truth. Anyway, his trip to the hospital apparently was a wake-up call for him. He's seeing a psychiatrist and a therapist, and he takes his medication. He also cleaned his house, apparently. I know he feels bad for everything, and he tries to make up for it in every way he can. He's always texting me sweet messages like, "I love you. I hope you're having a great day." And he often invites me to dinner or the movies. I try to reply, but sometimes I feel like such a horrible daughter. It's been a decade since we had a proper relationship, and it feels weird to try now. I have nothing to say to him. He doesn't know anything about me. He feels like a stranger. And now I live full-time at my mom's until I finish nursing school. I don't plan on returning to live with him. I've had enough. But I know he's trying. And I know everything that happened was because of his mental health issues, but I just can't bring myself to give him my energy again. I don't have anything left. My best friend thinks I am the AH. She says he's my father, he loves me, and he's trying, so I should feel lucky. My mom thinks the opposite. She actually told me, "You already gave 11 years of your life for him. I think it's time you think about yourself first for once." And that really resonated with me. But I also feel like I'm an ungrateful. So, what do you guys think? OP is not an AH for prioritizing her well-being over her toxic father. OP has been a victim of physical and emotional abuse from her father since childhood, and it's not easy for OP to reconcile with him. OP's father is an AH for abusing OP since childhood. OP's decision to set boundaries with her father is completely justified. So, I would rate OP father 2.5 and OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now move on to the next story from com_on_. Now 1. AITA for standing up for my friend to our other friend. I, 19F, and my best friend, 20M, who I'll call J, have been friends since we were about 9, so going on over a decade of friendship. We've seen each other through a lot, and things have been going fine up until I want to say a month ago. Me and him also gave another best friend, 19F, who I'll call Daisy, who I've known for about 5 years now and introduced them about 3 years ago. One thing to note about Jay is in the recent year or two of our friendship, it has been a constant thing where he would joke about how I would get tired of him, saying how he's waiting for the day I'll leave him for another friend or other people, and I've tried to make to where I would constantly reassure him that he was stuck with me and we would always be friends. His self-deprecation would occasionally cause issues because he would try to reflect his personal insecurities not only onto me but to Daisy, but it would mostly get swept under the rug because me and Daisy didn't want him to push us away. Up until a month ago, things within our friend group weren't going that great. Jay and Daisy were having issues, meaning that though they would never outwardly address anything, one would take a joke too far or say something the other didn't like, which would result in them coming to me afterwards to talk about. I would give my personal opinion on the issue, but I knew it would have to be between them to work, which wouldn't happen because neither of them is very confrontational. But it got to a certain point in which Jay was making constant jabs at Daisy because of an issue that happened at their job. To also preface, it was around this time he told us that If he ever did anything or said anything that we didn't like, then tell him. Jay and Daisy work at a restaurant together, where Daisy is a manager and actually got Jay a job there about a year ago. There's always something going on at their job, one focal point being how lazy their co-workers are. There has been one dude, Xavier, there that they work with that me and Jay used to go to school with. He was an annoying kid, and him and Jay don't really get along, but it's mainly one-sided. Jay doesn't like Xavier at all, while Xavier doesn't seem to really care or know that Jay doesn't like him. Jay talks about how lazy Xavier is, and how he does little to no work when they have a shift together. Now the issue with this is that Daisy informed me how lazy Jay was being lately, ever since he came back from school in May, always sitting down in the back, making a whole bunch of food for himself for free, that I guess they aren't allowed to have without the owner's permission. This has caused a lot of strain on Daisy, because while she is one of Jay's closest friends, she also doesn't want there to be conflict at work, especially if Jay wants to sit around and let every around him do the work. Well, the situation with Xavier came to a peak about last month when, upon finding out that he would be working a shift the next day, with Xavier, Jay called me and Daisy just to tell Daisy that he wouldn't be coming in because he didn't want to work with Xavier, leaving no one to really help Daisy out in the kitchen part of the restaurant. She constantly asked him why he couldn't, and if he would think about it, but she eventually did hang up out of frustration. After cooling down and talking to me, I did tell her that she should get Jay to at least find a replacement to fill his shift, which he made such a big deal about. Now, while Jay has the issue with Xavier, according to Daisy, while not that many people do care for him, Jay is the only person with an actual problem with him. Jay has never expressed this towards Xavier, however, only to Daisy, which he would say that she needed to do something about it because she's supposed to be a manager. Since his issue with Xavier has been progressing, he would constantly berate Daisy, always telling her that she should do her job and tell her employees that they need to work. When the next day comes, the day that Xavier and Jay would have been working together, I made it a point to call Jay to really see what was going on. He was reiterating how he didn't like how Daisy was handling the situation and that she could be a better manager, and that where I had to call him out. I told him that I personally didn't like the way that he was talking to me or Daisy lately, mainly referencing the call from the night before. I said that he sounds really rude and discouraging when he's nagging his good friend for something she has but so much control over. I told them that if the issue with Xavier was that serious, that he could bring in to the owner or even the manager above Daisy, who ironically enough Jay also doesn't like. I then ended with that, if taking about work makes him lash out at us as his friends, then he should talk about it with us, if he was just going to be mean. That was the last phone call me and him had. Daisy told me that her and Jay were cordial to each other at work, and things kind of went back to how they were before. But ever since I had that talk with him, he hasn't reached out since. It hurts that because I was defending my other friend, that now I look like the bad guy in his eyes. And Daisy, while acknowledges how rude and disrespectful it is that he's ignoring me with the radio silence, she won't mention me or talk about the situation with him because she's not confrontational and doesn't want to make things awkward at work. I get that, but in a sense, it makes me feel as though I'm now left on the outside because of an issue that didn't directly involve me to begin with. Not mad at Daisy, but just wish she didn't make me feel as though I was needed to be the one to confront the problem, because she would have rather it blew up in our faces. Realistically speaking, I don't know if Jay will reach out, because although me and him have been in few fights throughout our friendship, I have always been the one to reach out first, no matter who was wrong. I've even made it a point to not really call or text him, because I feel as though I'm not the one with the issue, and it's mainly him. Daisy, though she works with him, has already taken him out of her contacts and taken him off social media, but he doesn't know that, and she hoping to end their friendship silently. Either way, the entire situation truly has exhausted and left me questioning whether or not I'm a good friend. AITA? OP is not an AH for being concerned about her friend Daisy. OP's best friend Jay is an AH for giving the silent treatment to OP. OP is just trying to resolve the issue between both her friends. OP did nothing wrong. So, I would rate OP 0 out of 5 and Jay 2.5 on the AH scale. My ex-boyfriend called my husband and said, "Your wife's was mine first." AITA for throwing away his things and blocking him? My ex and I broke up a long time ago. We live far away from each other, and even when we were together, we only saw each other 6 to 7 times in an 8-month period. I was very understanding, because his dad needed brain surgery. We broke up because I spent my Valentine's Day waiting to bail him out of jail. I broke up with him a few days later because I fell out of my bed, and he wouldn't even come to the ER to visit. It was a pretty amicable breakup. When my husband and I first started dating, I packed up all of my ex's clothes and his plushie he got from his uncle. I am in dental school, so I don't have time to drive out 1.5 hours, so I asked him to come pick it up and that my husband will be here. I thought this was a good way of handling things. I didn't want to take his stuff from him or keep them. Both my husband and I were on the phone when he called. However, he started saying I owe him a DJ, and it's okay if I cheated on my husband. I have never cheated on anyone, and it's not in me. I asked him what the hell he's talking about, and his reasoning was, well, when you were at the jail, someone who also had trials said he saw you giving another guy head. This is crazy talk, because I spent 18 hours in a jail waiting room to get you out, and someone you don't even know says they're giving head out in the parking lot of a jail. I was with his best friend for 8 hours of the waiting time. He had a DJ job, so at 2 a.m. he came and was with me because I was by myself. I basically cussed out my ex, threw away his box, and changed my phone number. I also left his mom a voicemail to check his closet and see how her son makes money. That was petty, I know. However, he did always cancel plans on me, tell me he doesn't have money, yet was able to go to Las Vegas for 2 weeks with his boys. They were selling drugs. The reason I feel bad is I know that the plushie he gave me was from his uncle who passed away and loved him a lot. I don't have his address anymore, so I can't ship it. My husband doesn't like him, and told him to leave me alone because he kept calling him and saying, "Your wife's was mine first," and he just told me to change my number. My husband and I are always together, and he means it as a joke, but he's like, "I check your location so I know you didn't get kidnapped and are in San Jose. That's where my ex lives." It's a bad situation we started making jokes about, because my husband is always with me, and he knows what I'm doing, and vice versa. I feel like an asshole because I'd be sad if someone I trusted enough with my baby teddy plushie threw it away. I tried to give it to him, but saying I was giving head to someone in a jail waiting room is crazy talk. Also, pro tip, you can look up the county the jail is, and as long as you have enough info, you can search the trial dates. It's completely free, a bit annoying to find, but I'll try to post the one that searches all jails, but it only works in California. If you don't have a name, it'll at least show you what they're in for and the times/dates of anything happening in the case. I know his information, and I checked the date of his case. No one had the same trial dates. What pissed me off even more was the day I was there. The only reason why I was there for so long was someone started a riot, so they weren't letting anyone in or out. One of my best friends is a cop, and he said he would double-check in case it was in another county or filed wrong. He explained to his boss what had happened, and they asked the defense attorney for the local county, and she was nice enough to ask other district attorneys. They asked me if I wanted to press charges, but I was honestly just confused. My husband was a huge trooper out of this. He was never angry at me once, and he knew I didn't do anything like that. He also comforted me and said it's okay because no one is going to hurt me. He knew from the way my ex was talking and pulling stuff out of his butt to see me again. My husband offered to go by himself and just tossed the box outside of the door. I don't remember his address, but I do know where his mom works. I figured this was a huge risk, and I just threw the box away. AITA? Thank you for anyone willing to listen. And I know I said calling, but I'm typing on a phone, but he would call my phone and yell at him, cussing and saying weird stuff like that. My husband told me to change my phone after he threatened to rape me and let us raise the baby if he loves me so much. It's just absurd. OP is not an AH. Rather, her ex-boyfriend is an AH for accusing OP of cheating and threatening her. Despite his behavior, OP wanted good for him. So I would rate OP's boyfriend 3.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. As for OP, she is a good soul who was there for her ex-boyfriend during his difficult time. Not only this, she was careful not to hurt his feelings even after their breakup. So, she is not an AH, and I would rate her 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump on to the next story from Miss Moxie 2004. AITA for being rude to a nurse? I, 37F, am a respiratory therapist. It's a field that doesn't get a lot of respect, but all of us know this and we roll with it. Sometimes I work in a ward that has loads of patients who have tracheostomies and are chronic ventilator users. This ward has great nurses and great CNAs, all except for one. This one nurse, Wendy 25F, fake name, is unpleasant at her very best. She comes off like she was born angry. She's nasty to RTs, CNAs, and even her fellow nurses. She claims her top priority is her patients and not her co-workers. But if you tell her that her patient needs her, she'll huff and make a face before taking care of her patient. A few nights ago, Wendy and I had a chronic ventilator patient whose tracheostomy site had some problems resulting in the site being packed in Surgicel. The patient came to us like this. Surgicel is a surgical packing for difficult wounds. All I know is that Surgicel is put in place by the doctor, and anyone below NPs or PAs cannot touch it. It's also out of my scope of practice. From the minute I walked in, Wendy started on me about the track site. I explained to her it was packed in Surgicel, and so I couldn't touch it. She became snippy with, "Oh, so you're an RT who can't clean a track site. What kind of RT is that?" I pointed out that I can and do clean track sites, just not ones packed in Surgicel, as the wound care team has to do that. She railed on me for 7 hours to clean the site and even accused me of neglecting the patient, even though touching the Surgicel was out of my scope of practice. I and her fellow RNs repeatedly explained that I couldn't touch it because of the Surgicel, and I certainly couldn't remove the Surgicel myself. She even railed on the PCAs for the track site, insisting they'd given the patient insufficient baths. CNAs can't clean track sites and can't touch Surgicel either, and these patients were impeccably clean. Finally, I got sick of Wendy's nonsense and called my charge, who came up with the nurse manager. All of us collectively explained to Wendy that RTs and CNAs cannot touch a site packed in Surgicel, full stop. The nurse manager added that she should already know this, and her behavior towards us was unacceptable. The wound care team would have to deal with it. It was 3 a.m. by then. Wendy stood indignant and looked at me and my charge. She sneered, "I'm so sick of you two. I don't want to hear another word out of either of you." I looked Wendy straight in the eyes and farted. All the nearby nurses bust out laughing. My charge started laughing. The nurse manager looked like she wanted to explode for about 5 seconds before she doubled over laughing too. Wendy turned bright red before she flipped her lid on me and stormed into the break room. The CNAs let me know how funny they thought that was. Since then, Wendy claims I made a laughingstock of her and no one respects her anymore. She also sneered that everyone loves the RT who can't clean a track site, but not a hard-working nurse like me. In a small hospital story like this, travel fast. So of course the whole hospital knows. The most common reaction I get is that I put Wendy in her place, although that wasn't my intent. It was spur-of-the-moment cheekiness. Thinking back, I think it was unprofessional and rude, but I was really sick of her. So I put to all of you AITA, edit to add, I guess I forgot to put it in my original post. We were all in the hallway in front of the nurses' station. Not in the patient room when this exchange occurred. A few of you have mentioned human resources. They are very familiar with Wendy. She's had to be moved 6 times because she's so unpleasant. As of right now, she's being given the chance to change her behavior before more stringent actions are taken against her. Update. I didn't realize I forgot to update this story. There is an update. Though before I continue, thank you all for all your responses to my first post. I have to admit I got a big laugh out of the intentionally farted comments. Just to get it out of the way, I didn't get in any trouble for the fart heard round the hospital. Even my boss laughed when the charge told her the story, though I've been branded with nicknames like Toots and Windy Mindy. All in good faith and good fun though. So, 2 weeks went by and unfortunately, I was on the same ward and same night as Wendy. She was as always unpleasant and just plain nasty. But this time, she wouldn't even look me in the eye. If I told her a patient needed something, she ignored me. I'd just shrug it off and ask another nurse and it would get done. There were 2 CNAs on that shift that night, Faith and Lovely, fake names. They're both lovely individuals and wonderful CNAs. Their patients are always clean and impeccably taken care of. For context, Lovely is from a war-torn part of the world, and at the time was awaiting word on the status of her family. We know now her family is alive and unharmed. Wendy, true to form, was being nasty to them that night, but they didn't complain. So, Wendy stonewalled and avoided me all night for a good 6 hours, which is not a great thing in healthcare. At around 2 a.m., she started on me about something to do with a chronic ventilator patient and how to determine what their settings should be. She stated something that was so wrong about vent settings, it made my head spin. Then, to top it off, she accused me of being careless for not taking her recommendation. I flat out told her she was completely wrong and pointed out the patient was well established in their ventilator settings. She huffed and left the room. 20 minutes later, the nurse manager asked me to come to the conference room because Wendy wanted to talk to me. I called my charge, who came with me. Wendy said that she didn't appreciate my disrespect regarding not making ventilator changes she'd asked for. My response was that her facts were wrong. The settings she wanted were inappropriate for the patient and would have hurt the patient. Eventually, the NM got her to admit she was still upset with me over the fart, that she felt disrespected and unheard. I admitted I could have handled the situation a little better and could have solved it without farting. Wendy claimed that nobody respects her anymore since the fart heard round the hospital. It was past 2:00 a.m., and frankly I can't even remember what came over me before I said what I said next. I said, "Wendy, what makes you think you were ever respected to begin with? Because the whole time you've been working here, you act like you hate every day. You're alive and every person you meet. You are so nasty to everyone you work with. You've had to be moved through every ward in the hospital, and then you had to be moved from day shift to night shift because the staff couldn't deal with you. There are RTs who refuse to work this ward because they don't want to work with you. What are you going to do when you run out of wards on night shift?" Wendy complained that she got irritated from having to fix the same problem repeatedly, to which I pointed out that she's at work. It's work, and it's why she gets paid for her time. I also pointed out that Lovely is waiting to find out if her parents, siblings, and nieces and nephews are alive. Yet she doesn't abuse her coworkers, and she has to take a ration of Wendy's garbage every time they work together. As for the nature of our work, healthcare is heart-wrenching and chronic care can be very unpleasant. But we're all working at the same place, so we're all suffering like her. I summed it up with, I shouldn't have farted at her, but there's no excuse for her behavior. After I said that, my charge added that there were few RTs willing to work this ward because of her. Our director is very familiar with her. The nurse manager nodded and said, "She's right, Wendy, and you and I need to have a sit-down about your conduct." We left the meeting, me with my head up and Wendy looking down. The next day, my boss told me to start writing Wendy up for improper conduct every time she's abrasive or mean. Human resources will handle it from there. Since then, Wendy has been mostly aloof, but she certainly hasn't been mean or nasty. She's been on that ward for a few months now, and I don't know where she stands with the rest of the nurses or if they'll want her moved again. I don't think the day will ever come where Wendy will be Miss Mary Sunshine, but at least she's no longer abusing her co-workers. That's pretty much it. I didn't get into any trouble. I certainly wasn't reprimanded. I flat out told Wendy that the way she treats her co-workers is completely unacceptable, and the management agreed with me. And if it wasn't abundantly clear already, I certainly wasn't required to get a colonoscopy or any other GI exam to determine if I intentionally farted. That's all for now, everyone. OP is not the AH for standing up to Wendy's toxic behavior and bullying. While the fart was unprofessional, it was a harmless reaction to Wendy's repeated bullying and unreasonable demands. As for scores, I would rate OP 0 and Wendy 3.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump on to the next story from Advertising Mundane 69. AITA for going off at my ex-best friend. So, 2 years ago, I reconnected with someone I used to know. We were in the same sports team and went out for drinks to reconnect. Let's call her Beth for the sake of the story. Also, I feel the need to tell the whole story, so everyone understands the context. Beth and I became closer and eventually became the best of friends. We went on a girls' trip together, but if I am being honest, that's when I started doubting if this friendship was healthy. Our friendship was a bit unstable for a while and even had a really big fight. I still really wanted it to work out between us because she was my best friend, but I noticed everything was my initiative. I decided to see how long it would take for her to show interest in me or my life. 6 months, I heard nothing, no "how are you" or anything like that. It hurt me because I was showing so much interest in her, and putting a lot of time and energy into that friendship, but got nothing in return. From my point of view, we grew apart. Beth, however, still called us best friends and thought everything was a-okay with us. That's when I decided that maybe we should talk, and I should point out what has been bothering me. The thing is, I didn't at first because if you really are best friends, showing any sort of interest in each other is below the bare minimum, and I didn't want her interest to become forced. But I also believe in what you don't change, you choose. So I texted her if she'd be open to have a chat. She asked, "What about?" I answered that some stuff has been bothering me in our friendship, and I want to talk to her about. She agreed but didn't have time anywhere soon because of how busy she was with school and everything. I asked her to let me know when she did have time. Fast forward to 3 weeks later. The other girls, Beth and I, went on a trip together. Beth and I drove there together. It was a 2 hour drive and we didn't talk the entire way there. Just blasted songs, fun, but I feel like it would have been a perfect time to talk. But I never got a chance to start anything up because a good song would come on and she would turn the music up and start screaming along. We arrived and settled in. For some context, I had just gone to a Taylor Swift concert 2 days before the trip and was so in awe of the whole thing, it made me an even bigger fan. I was watching some TikToks on the couch when a Taylor Swift TikTok came up, and all of a sudden, Beth goes, "Ugh, Taylor Swift. I don't understand what you like about her. She isn't even a good performer, and her stage presence nowhere to be found." I looked at her and said, "Well, what do you base that opinion on?" She goes, "Well, I only had to see like 3 videos for her to know she isn't." I was irritated and said, "Well, those videos were probably less than a minute, and I went to her concert that was 3 hours. Believe me, she is a good performer." And the discussion ended there. The rest of the trip I would sometimes make jokes with my best friend. Let's call her Leah. And when I saw a love sign, I joked, if there would be Anna behind that, it would be a Taylor Swift album. And then Beth wasn't even near us, but came around the corner just to tell me that Taylor Swift doesn't live up to the hype and that she is a bitch, and then she just took off. Now don't get me wrong, if someone would talk about something they like, but they got a little too obsessive, it is annoying, I get that. But if she didn't like it, she should have told me, "Hey, I get that you like her, but maybe we can talk about something other than Taylor Swift." And I would have totally understood. She, for example, likes K-pop, I do not at all. But I've never bashed her for it. Because K-pop stars are good performers, but it's just not for me. But she still saw us as best friends. And I feel like you shouldn't be so negative about something that your best friend is so passionate about. It sounds really pity, but in the 6 months that she showed no interest, I was actually doing pretty bad. Me and my ex had some issues, and I was really hurt about how he had treated me. Then I feel like I lost my best friend because she showed no interest or anything in me. So, the Taylor Swift concert coming up made me excited, and listening to the music more before the concert helped me get through some stuff. And even though she didn't know this, she still was talking down on something that was important to me. I went home a day early from the trip because of work. Driving home, I bawled my eyes out because I was so hurt by everything. By the time I came home, I was angry. I talked to my mom, and we agreed that I should just remind her if we could still have that chat. So, I texted with a reply to the earlier question to talk, "Hey, can we still have that chat soon?" She read the text, and half an hour later, I got an entire Bible full of how I ruined her night with the other girls, and that I shouldn't have brought this up while she was still on her trip. I agree that my timing was a bit off, but I did not see that reaction coming. I apologized for the off timing, but didn't understand why she was so mad, and that maybe we shouldn't do this over text and just talk when she comes back the day after. She said she wouldn't have time. We were going to have dinner with the girls when they got back and have some drinks later. I asked if we could please talk in between dinner and drinks. She agreed after a long discussion. The day after, we talked, and I said what was bothering me. She was just nodding her head and saying sorry in a high-pitched voice. I feel like she didn't listen to a word I said. Ever since, there's been tension, and she's been rude to me. Fast forward to a few months later, she broke up with her boyfriend. Me and the girls went over to Beth's house to support her. I debated going because I wasn't that close with her, but I know I was so hurt for her not being there for me, so I went anyways. Treat people the same way you want to be treated. Me and my friend brought wine and roses for her. We were chatting, and one of my friends said, "I'm sad that the friend group is falling apart," and then Beth responded, "Yeah, me too, but that's all her fault," and pointed at me. I asked why. And then she said that I was picking fights with everyone. my ex, her, etc. I said, I don't agree, and that was standing up for myself and trying to talk it out whenever I felt I wasn't treated right. She brushed it off, but I felt so hurt because I knew it wasn't my fault, but I already had a guilt feeling about the friend group. Later that night, the subject of our summer vacation came up. Beth said she didn't think she was going to come with us because it would be too awkward with her and her ex. We're all in the same friend group. My ex is too. I was surprised because she has a big fear of missing out. But I understood. I drove my best friend Leah home, and she also mentioned that she was surprised about it, but we understood. The next day, we met to talk about the vacation plans and came up with a plan. For context, there was a vague plan, but we had to change it because two people planned a different trip around the original date. Beth knew this. Beth wasn't there because she didn't want to see her ex, even though he offered to stay home so she could go to the meeting. We came up with a plan, and we all agreed. Later that week, I texted to confirm something with the group in the group chat, and all of a sudden, she was going off at Leah because she wasn't a part of this plan, and we never discussed this date or destination with her. I texted her privately with these plans and why we made them. She went off at me and cussed me out for some things. I said I understood that she was upset, but she said she didn't want to go. She said I should have never assumed that she didn't want to go, because she said that when her emotions were out of control due to the breakup. I understood, but there was no other date available for us to all be able to go, and that I was sorry for the misunderstanding. She still went off at me. I called her to talk about this, and then she went back in her high-pitched voice apologizing. I was done with her cussing me out over text, and then being too sweet on the phone or real life. So now it was my turn. I went off at her. I said that her high-pitched voice could f*** off, and that she should open that big mouth of hers that she has over text to me. She hesitated, but went off. I said she had no right to treat me or my friend that way, and that it was a misunderstanding that she can't blame us for. And so on. We ended the phone call okay, but there's still tension. Even though there was still tension, I was invited to her birthday last week. I already knew I was not going because I wouldn't want people on my birthday that don't want to be there. So I did pay my share of the gift, but I didn't go. And I told her I wasn't feeling well. Now I haven't heard from the entire friend group except for my best friend. Of course, there's two sides to every story. So from her POV, I think I did something wrong. So after this incredibly long story and maybe a little too many details, was I the asshole? OP is not for standing up for herself when Beth tried to disrespect her. OP repeatedly tried to address issues between them maturely, but Beth always disregarded OP's feelings and make no effort to nurture the friendship. As for scores, I would rate OP 0 and OP's friend 1.5 out of 5 on the scale. My druggy boyfriend claims to have invented a new color and demands $4,000 for his research. AITA for refusing? I, F24, have been dating my boyfriend, M29, for 3 years, and while he's always been a bit wacky, I usually find it kind of endearing. This time, however, he's really outdone himself. A few weeks ago, he told me he had a groundbreaking idea that would change humanity forever. Entertaining him, I asked what it was. His answer? He wants to invent a new color. Before we go any further, it's important to note, we are both college graduates. I graduated in biochemistry last year, and my boyfriend in philosophy a few years before, which makes this all the wilder, I guess. I tried to gently point out that colors exist as part of the visible spectrum of light, so unless he was about to discover some new wavelength, this might not be possible. But he waved me off, calling me close-minded, and saying he was enlightened in a way you'll never be. At first, I just nodded and let him ramble about his vision. But then, he told me he needed funding to start his research. Specifically, he wanted me to give him $4,000 so he could buy supplies, including advanced art tools, a lab coat, because apparently scientists wear them so it would make him feel smarter, and, wait for it, a trip to the desert because he thinks the pure sunlight there will inspire him. I told him absolutely not. I'm saving for grad school, and even if I weren't, I'm not dropping thousands of dollars on his whatever this is. He got mad, saying I didn't believe in him or his Potential to revolutionize human perception. He even accused me of being jealous, that he had a world-changing idea, and I didn't. It got really heated, and he ended up saying a lot of things about using my card, as he knew the details anyway. For reference, he's been unemployed for a while now, whilst I've got a regular job. I ended up saying some things I do regret, but a lot of it was retaliation. Now he's sulking and telling everyone I'm unsupportive and afraid of innovation. His friends are backing him up, saying I should be encouraging his creativity instead of crushing his dreams. AITA for refusing to fund his quest to invent a new color? Edit. In terms of drugs, we both smoke weed, but he is not that crazy type of weed addict, so I don't know if I can really blame this on a bad trip. Second edit. Thank you guys for all the advice. I've moved the majority of my money into my second bank account for now, which I'm pretty sure he doesn't have access to. In terms of his mental health, I'm not in the habit of sharing his personal history online, but seeing all your comments, I do agree that this might be a mental health issue, and I'm going to attempt to approach him with the idea of a consultation tomorrow. If anyone has any advice on that, please let me know, as I don't want it to come across as insulting. I know he was down after his job, but the comments have got me more worried about more serious illnesses that he may have. OP is not an AH for refusing to fund her boyfriend's outlandish, childish idea. She is in the wrong for being practical and protecting her finances for grad school. So I would rate OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. As for OP's boyfriend, he is either crazy or wants to deplete OP's resources because her finances are easy target for him. Whatever is the case, OP's boyfriend is an AH, and I would rate him at least 3.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump on to the next story from Eternally-Sep Pukuing. AITA for refusing to apologize and cutting off communication with my boyfriend. I, F24, am dating my boyfriend, 28M. We are both introverted and generally keep to ourselves. A little bit about my character. I'm mostly a recovering people pleaser and suffer from the anxiety of wanting to ensure that everyone is comfortable, especially when they are in my space or just in general. Now, I met my M 2 years ago, and shortly thereafter, met his brother, who right off the bat was sort of standoffish. Note, we are at different economic levels. I just recently graduated and live in a studio apartment, and you can just tell that I don't have money. I mean, I'm clean and everything, but I don't know a lot about the high-end life. My BF, on the other hand, recently bought his home, and his brother works a very high-end job, as does his wife. My BF is very low maintenance, laid back and chill. I feel super safe with him, and never once has he ever made me feel like I don't belong. In fact, when we started dating, he would make sure that I am with him any free time I got, and gradually gave me authority over running the house when he is not around, his house. On the other hand, the brother's continued disapproval of me continued to grow, such that even when he came over to visit, he would straight up ignore my presence. No hi, no nothing. The cherry on top, he would come with his kids like me, I think, and I would be in the kitchen making them all sorts of things. I grew concerned about this behavior and one day told my BF, I think your brother doesn't like me. He told me that the brother could be too much in his head and his ignoring, maybe it's not personal. So, again, I decided not to take it personally since we had never exchanged hurtful words or anything. Enter mother-in-law. Since I started hanging out with my BF, I finally got to meet the mother-in-law, and she welcomed me with open arms. She loves me, I can attest to that. Her and I have the same personality. Anyways, the problem comes in that she started pushing me to meet the other members of the family. In my culture, as the girl, you wait to be invited to people's spaces, e.g., if I lived close to my brother, and he had a GF, I would ensure to invite the girl into my home, and make her feel comfortable. I think that's how it works universally. Anyways, remember I said my BF and the bro live close to each other? Not one time did the bro or his wife invite us to his home. He would invite the brother for BBQs and stuff, but never ever asked him to bring me, and as time went, my BF stopped going as well. Now the mother-in-law asked me if I had ever visited my brother-in-law's home or even interacted with the wife, and I said no. I never told her that I think her son doesn't like me, but she kept insisting that I should visit my sister-in-law's, wife to the brother, and get to know my sis. So, me, the new person, I'm the one to reach out. I did anyways, and it went well, but I could tell that there was no real bonding. But then again, Fake it till you make it right? We interacted a couple more times when there would be birthdays for the girls and family dinners, and nothing big deal. Well, that all came crashing down the other day. My parents-in-law are very traditional. They wanted us to get married ASAP and start a family. So they wanted to go meet my parents for the first time, and of course my brother-in-law and everyone in the family were supposed to go because culturally that's how it is. So when we went to brother-in-law's to have a meeting about the whole thing, tell me why this man said, "It's all well and good that Luke, my BF, and his friend want to get married, but are they even ready? My wife and I are the ideal married couple, and people around ask how we do it. I just don't want to be pulled into something that won't work or that will come crashing down soon." He said all this with his back turned from me, and he did not once refer to me by my name. He called me Luke's friend seriously. Was I wrong to get terribly hurt by this? Everyone else referred to me by my name, even my father-in-law. The cherry on top, the brother-in-law also in his speech implied I was after my BF's money we met on a dating app, and he had only a few pics in black and white and one colored nothing flashy on that profile. As a matter of fact, I thought he was lying when we went to his home because he is just so simple. Anyways, all that mad talk had me crying because I'm so sensitive, LMAO. And the wife, sister-in-law, just sat there quietly, and no one called him out on his BS. Well, no actually. My BF got so angry, and he said we were leaving, and we left. There was a brief heated exchange between them, but my anxiety was so bad I'm only remembering bits and pieces because I was so consumed with, "I'm the common denominator in all this, I'll just extricate myself. You don't have to worry about me." But hearing my BF defend me so vehemently, yeah, I snapped right out of that pity party in my head. Anyways, after we left, the sister-in-law texted me to apologize and asked if she can come and talk to me woman to woman. I told her that's fine. Again, I'm so naive I think everyone has good intentions until it's too late. First of Reddit, what do you understand when someone tells you, "I want us to talk woman to woman"? Doesn't this mean that no lies, no pretending, like they want you to talk honestly and whatever is said is not going to be used against you? Anyways, we met up, and I told her that that whole saga confirmed what I had always thought, that the brother-in-law didn't like me. But what I don't know is what did I do? I wanted to understand why he was like that, etc. Did I treat their kids badly? Did I do something to offend them? And she was like, no, he is just like that. He has been very stressed with work lately and is panicking about school fees and everything, so I think the stress of it got to him. So I'm his stress punch bag? Anyways, I told her, well, I DK about that and now my heart has blackened. And I probably won't be coming to their house anymore. This lady couldn't wait to go tell all the family, excluding my BF. And then it was a whole other saga. Father-in-law was involved. He called the brothers and told them to make peace, and also told my BF. In the whole thing, sister-in-law implied that I was the problem. And then mother-in-law called me and told me to go and apologize to the brother-in-law and tell him that we are sorry that his brother, my BF, didn't mean to cause a scene and we still need his blessings. I did not do any of that. Now I'm here wondering, am I the a-hole for opening up and telling this lady what my heart knew? My BF and I are done with them, and he apologized for overlooking all those times that his brother acted standoffish. OP is not an AH for setting boundaries from her toxic boyfriend's brother and his wife. OP's brother is an AH for being disrespectful towards OP and her wife too. OP is trying to defend herself, she did nothing wrong. So I would rate OP's BF's brother 2.5 and OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump on to the next story. From Unlikely-Fall 3131. AITA for wanting an apology from my friend and being upset with her? Some context? I'm in my early 20s and a college student. My friend is enrolled in the same degree I am. We met and became friends pretty quickly, and I consider her a really close friend. I am a very depressed person. I've been depressed since I could remember. I am very much aware of all of my issues and where they stem from. I've worked with therapists to try and deal with my low self-esteem, depression, anxiety, ADHD, and etc. But it often just because me diagnosing myself or my therapist being unsure on how to help me. My friend Opal shares some of my issues. Because of a rough home life, she was struggling for a while. When I learned about this, I encouraged her to seek therapy to maybe unpack some of that. I'm really proud of her for this. Lately, we've been getting into these weird disagreements that I don't want. It started when she, I guess I would call it, snapped at me in public while we were out with friends. For a bit more context, I have a very self-deprecating sense of humor. It's how I cope with feeling very lost and miserable in my life. While I was chatting with friends, I think, making some self-deprecating jokes. I really don't remember even what I said. And she suddenly blew up at me. Basically, in short, scolding me in public for talking down on myself and not trying to better my situation. I told her I wasn't in the mood yet, she continued, even trying to pull someone else into the convo to back her up. I expressed I didn't want to be tag-teamed for this. After this, on the walk home, I was very cold because I felt really humiliated and disrespected. I was, and honestly still am, very upset by it. When I got home, I wrote her a message saying I didn't appreciate how she talked to me or where she did it either, and also apologizes about the tone of the message and that I was acting cold. She responded in a way that still bothers me. She told me she won't do it again, but that I need to self-actualize, and that she's also struggling, but at least she's taking steps to better herself. I told her I was trying. Most days it's hard for me to get out of bed, let alone further dissect why I'm a mess. Lately, she's been starting these conversations where she pushes me to talk to her about how I'm feeling. I know how hard it is to have a mentally ill person in your life, and I don't usually vent to people, but she just kept pushing so I would crack, and then it would be this whole conversation on how I'm worth more, and etc., that I didn't want or need in that moment. During our last conversation, she just started saying that I wasn't like this before, and I told her honestly, the closer I consider you to be, the more I deteriorate in your eyes. It's hard to look happy all the time, so around the people I feel I can trust, I crack and my issues show. She told me that this was putting weight on her mental health, and that yeah, we were close, but not at the cost of her own mental health, and she keeps talking in a way, implying that if I don't fix my shit, my boyfriend will leave me because he'll get sick of me. He's very much aware to all of the extent of my issues. I never knew I was a burden on her mental health, and frankly, she was a bigger one on mine. Because of how many times she would bring up these conversations, I lost many nights of sleep, like this one, and would spiral. I've apologized multiple times about things that made her uncomfortable, and moments I unknowingly made her sad. But I can't help but be angry. I feel judged, and I know she does judge me. It feels like she's pushing her vision of recovery on me. I have very little reasons to live, and it's so hard to function day to day. She keeps pressing me on these things, but for me to recover, I would have to put my life on pause, which I can't because of other reasons. I feel like I'm being painted as the person pushing these things. I feel like I'm for being this angry. I never ask for someone to fix me. I can't change overnight after a couple of, but you're a great person. I didn't even want to have most of those conversations that ruined good nights of sleep. AITA for being angry with her and for wanting an apology? Edit. After rereading this, I feel I might have come off a bit harsh. She really is a wonderful person and wants better for me. She tries to encourage me to do more with my talents and that I deserve more and that I am more. I really believe she loves me and cares for me. I just don't know how to navigate this. OP is not an AH for demanding apology from his friend. OP's friend is an AH for making jokes about him in public. OP's reaction is completely justified. She did nothing wrong. So, I would rate OP's friend 2.5 and OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now move on to the next story from Euphoric-Sky-7394. AITA for how mine and my dad's relationship has ended up. I, 22F, and my dad, 50M, have hit a rough patch starting a few years ago. Growing up, I used to be a daddy's girl. I wanted to do everything with him, like him coming to my school lunches anytime he could, playing WoW with him after school, asking him questions all the time. Once I reached middle school, I started wanting to be around my mom more. I'd always go with her anytime she left the house, watched TV with her all the time, laid in bed with her and talked all the time. She was my best friend. We grew a lot closer when she was diagnosed with stage 4 liver cancer. Any chance I could go see her in the hospital I would, or call her anytime she was awake. I was around 13 when she got diagnosed, and she was in a hospital about 2-3 hours away. So my dad would stay with her and come home once a week while my older sister, 26F, watched me. Once my mom came back home, we were inseparable. She truly was my best friend. I should also add that my dad has slight anger issues and a short temper. Growing up, I would just take the anger he threw at me without a thought. Until I met my current boyfriend of 6 years, 24M. After about a year of dating, he started talking to me more about my dad's behavior. Mostly how he spoke to me. My dad would get livid over the smallest things. Like if we ever entered his office, he would immediately yell, "What?" and get annoyed. Or once he asked me to do the dishes before he got home from work, which I did. But my sister put a dirty dish in the sink before he got home, and he lost his mind on me about not doing one simple task. When I reached the age of 16, I had to get a job and provide for myself. Thankfully, my mom helped a lot and wouldn't let my dad be as harsh as he wanted to be. Sadly, in 2021, my mother lost her battle-to-live cancer. When she got put on hospice, I took a leave from my job to be her nurse. I went to CNA school, and this was always my plan for if she got worse. My dad was livid that I took leave because that meant that his 17-year-old daughter was able to pay the rent since she spent all her time with her dying mother. When she did pass, he kept pushing me to go back to work every day so I could start paying him rent. I was livid. My best friend and my own mother died, and my dad just wanted money from me. Shortly after her passing, he started dating an old coworker and moved in with her. He let my sister and I stay in our house and pay him rent. After a month or two, we decided to ask our friend to move in to help with our rent. We told our dad about it, and he agreed and then proceeded to up the rent. We stayed there for about a year, until we all decided to move out, except for my sister who still lives there. After moving out, I took some space from my dad to clear my head. Now we barely talk. One time after I had moved out, while being freshly 18, I experienced my first tire blowout on the way to a job interview. I called my dad frantically to ask him what I should, and to hopefully borrow money for a new tire and to pay him back. A few years prior to this, my oldest sister experienced the same thing, and he bought her 4 new tires. When he answered, I told him what happened on the verge of tears because I was scared, and by myself. The first thing he asked was, "What are you even doing out at 8 in the morning?" After I told him why he told me to call my boyfriend's dad and have him help instead, since he hasn't had his coffee yet. I keep trying to reach out, and every time I'm met with short replies or lectures on how my life could be better. After my mom died, I just wanted to know I had him still, and I feel like I'm losing him too. Anytime I speak with my sister, she tells me that he calls her at least once a week to check on her. Before Thanksgiving, the last time we talked was October 1st when I was in the hospital. He didn't even say Happy Thanksgiving until I messaged him late that night. I keep getting my hopes up that our relationship will get better, but every time I try, I'm shot down. OP is not an AH for prioritizing her emotional well-being. OP's father is an AH for emotionally abusing and neglecting her for years. OP's decision of moving away from her father is completely justified. She did nothing wrong. So, I would rate OP's father 2.5 and OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump onto the next story, weary_relation_9578. AITA for telling him I'd rather go find a man who fully wants to provide for me? My fiancé 36 and I 33 have been together for 3 years. We moved in together 2 years ago. At that time, I had a lot of money, savings and inheritance. I had just gotten a divorce a while before that. My whole life, I've never had to work. Wealthy parents and wealthy ex-husband. However, my current partner isn't wealthy, and I'm not someone who chooses to a partner based on their bank balance, so I chose to pursue a relationship with him. The first 2 years of us being together, we were traveling a lot, living the luxurious life. We decided to move in together and split the rent, which wasn't a problem for me at that time, obviously. We even got engaged the very next year. I was deciding on what business to start, and was very confident that within a year, max I'd be in a great place with my new business, and won't have financial difficulties. My first illusion. My business was growing surely but slowly. I had to dip into savings more. I agree, I wasn't being smart with my money, and I just would spend it easily. Reason: difficult, long ex-marriage, depression, etc. And wanted to just have some fun and happiness in life when I felt alive again. Slowly, it came to a point where I had no money to pay my share of the rent. Now the entire of my life until now, since he started to pay my rent and bills, have become worse in terms of finances. He keeps saying he pays my share of the rent that he didn't agree to, at least one a day. Clearly there's resentment and not stupid, I see it. When he's in a good mood, he's happy being the provider. When he's in a bad mood, he takes nasty digs at me for not paying my rent or not having money to pay my bills. I'm already in around 15,000 debts since I tried to use my means as much as I can to pay for myself before I had to fully depend on him. I hate the feeling of being dependent on someone who insults you every day about it. I'm not sitting at home idle. I work on building my business day and night like a crazy person. I've had a traumatic past and childhood, so I always make it a point to never settle for the life I don't want, and I stuck by it. If I don't, I know I'll get mega depressed and take drastic steps, so I prioritize a little luxury for myself no matter what. When I say luxury, I mean the luxury of being able to only live the way I want to live. That being said, I've been trying to find a job going out of my comfort zone because his digs are very stressful. Obviously, no luck yet. Now, this behavior of his is slowly giving me a big ick, and we're due to get married very soon, and I honestly have no clue what to do. Why did he choose to remain with me if paying my rent is such a massive burden to him that's taking a big toll on him? Surely you can't love someone if you keep getting annoyed that you have to pay their rent and bills. It's not much, but he doesn't earn much either. In midst of arguments when I say, let's end it, he says, we can't. Families have invested a lot of money in the wedding, so we can't back out, and we love each other, but we're financially not okay. Now the most recent argument I lost it, and said, I'd rather find a man who fully wants to provide for me. I'm tired of him complaining about doing the bare minimum for me. Literally my rent and basic essential bills. I'm living like a nun. I don't even go out. I don't do any personal self-care. I've fully downgraded my quality of life choosing to be with him. And he's still complaining when he has a full job with regular income, which he hates, but at least he has one. My business is slowly growing, and he does see it, and believes in it more than me, apparently. So I don't understand what the hell I should do. I'm forced into thinking that all the women online preaching about finding a man who fully wants to provide is the only right thing to do when I never used to believe in such stereotypes. Can someone please talk to me? Because my depression is slowly creeping back in, and I'm someone who acts from love and always comes from a place of love, but I'm realizing the world is a bit more selfish and crueler than I realize. If we'd be in a better place if our finances are good, then how is this a relationship based on love? How am I even supposed to marry this person? OP is not an AH for showing mirror to her fiancé. OP's fiancé is an AH for constantly reminding OP of being dependent on him. He disrespects OP in a worst possible way. OP's concern is valid, so I would rate OP 0 out of 5, and OP's fiancé 2.5 on the AH scale. Let's now move on to the next story from Jade Dodds, 2021, AITA. If I cut off my parents after threatening 2 phone social services and police because my husband is autistic? I, 28F, and my husband, 32M, have been together for 9 years and married for 3. We met online and hit it off straight away, as he was the first person not to send the typical male photo or meet for a hookup. He stayed up to talk to me whilst I worked nights and drove 2 hours on a bike for our first date. I love him with all my heart, but know he can be a pain in the arise sometimes and can feel like I'm caring for him a lot, as he suffers from autism, anxiety, depression, and like any relationship, I have complained about things too, my family, which has caused all these problems. We have had a long and hard journey too, having our son Arthas, can tell my husband's favorite game, and thought it would never happen, with having 8 miscarriages over 8 years. This is the topic that has caused the most strain and caused my husband to dislike my parents, 59F and 57M. 2 weeks after our first miscarriage in 2017, my mum told me that I needed to get over it now and that I was ruining my dad's birthday by being upset still and putting a damper on my brother and his girlfriend's pregnancy that was due 3 months before. I had another miscarriage a month before my nephew was born. My mum came into my work too, shouted at me till I cried for not going to the hospital the day he was born, as I had messaged to say I wasn't ready emotionally. I lost my 4th one whilst at work and told my mum there and then as we worked together. She said, for God's sake, why can't you stop having miscarriages and carry one? After this, I never told her when I was pregnant again until my one with Arthas, as it had been a while, and thought she would be better if it had ended up being another loss. Have had comments from my brothers, 30M and 32M, as well, including one accusing me of stealing his limelight for being pregnant at the same time, and the other saying I've had enough miscarriages to have my own football team. I've also had one of the girlfriends constantly asking me what a miscarriage felt like and how I knew I was having them. I understood that she was worried with her own pregnancy, but after saying I wasn't comfortable with the questions, to have my mum tell me to stop being emotional and to answer the questions, and then made fun of for knowing so much about fertility information after so many losses and having PCOS. My mum has never liked my husband since meeting him, as she didn't like we met online. Told her we were going to get him diagnosed with autism officially, to be told I should leave him, and asked why would I want to stay with someone like that. Got told I should leave him and find someone else to have children with. Said our son looked like him when he was born and had the most disgusted look on her face, and many more comments over the years. So, our son was born on Halloween through a planned C-section. He is our first, and after that experience will be our only. I have a high pain tolerance, but that pain was on another level. Dealing with this and severe PPD, figuring out how to look after our son, and trying to keep the house in order, we got stressed and things were said. I nearly left my husband as I felt he would have a better life without us. I wasn't good enough for my son. He could find someone better too, be his mum. That I had ruined the life me and my husband had, and that I felt I wasn't made out to be a mum. My husband had said he hated our son, but later explained that he meant he hated the stress, and when he decided to wee when his nappy was off. However, I obviously took it at face value and went more down the spiral, fueled by my PPD, and needed someone to talk about these feelings with, so spoke to my family. With all the points mentioned, they just took the point of my husband saying he hated our son, and me still being in pain a week after the C-section, and decided that I was coming back to live with them with Arthas, not asking but telling me. At this point I told them no, and that it wasn't good to uproot the system we already had, and that we had to work it out for ourselves as a family. When my son was over 2 weeks old, my mum came round the house, had 2 minutes of small talk with me, before screaming at my husband that he was controlling, that he had changed me, and that I don't have a mind of my own, which at this point I didn't. I had only been on tablets for my PPD for 1 day, and they hadn't kicked in yet, but they definitely helped. My husband did not raise his voice once too. My mum but did swear at her, told her to shut the f*** up, as he wasn't going to be screamed at in his own house, which caused her to cry, and phone my dad too, come and sort him out. He told her that there had been multiple times where I have come home crying because of comments she's made, that I feel like she favors my brothers over me. She said she concentrated on one the most because she thought he was going to become a famous football player, and that he was going to look after her when he did, and mentioned the comment from first miscarriage. At first said she never did, and then said she probably did, but can't remember. She asked me if any of this was true too, which I said yes, you have made comments before that have upset me, and it seemed as soon as I tried to tell her how I felt, she screamed about how she has cancer, and I shouldn't be treating her this way. She has had cancer since I was 4, and this is the first time she has ever said it too. My face, I found out she had cancer because her friend accidentally told me. My husband then said, did I want to go upstairs for a private chat with my mum over stuff, which we did, only to end up being about how much I've disappointed her. That even my gambling, alcoholic, ex-drug user brother, who lost custody of his son for having broken ribs, is better than me, and that she would ring social services and police on my husband for being autistic and shouldn't be allowed to look after a child. I'll be honest, I just sat there and let her say these things as I am a people pleaser and have never said anything if I thought it was going to cause an argument or upset someone. At this point, my dad has turned up and told my mum to get out as she is just causing problems, but then later starting arguing with my husband, as well as I said I wasn't going to be leaving the house to go to theirs. He mentioned how he has come to my dad multiple times for meetings about how I felt and about how my mum talks to me, but my dad said he never took him seriously because he's not all there and doesn't know what he is going on about as he's autistic. My dad left on sort of civil terms with us, but I did break down afterwards, and I said that I didn't want to be alive dealing with this anymore. We asked my aunt, dad's sister, to come round too, basically vent to her, and ask to act as a middle person for us, as I no longer felt comfortable talking to my family, and said I had lost all trust in them. We felt like we couldn't go round to theirs anymore, as anything I did with my son that they didn't like they would report, that if they were left with our son, they would be bad-mouthing my husband too, him and leading him to hate his own dad. I asked for them to give us space, and I would contact them when I am ready, which my dad did for 2 days, before messaging me about coming round the house, and my mum messaged me every day, asking why I was ignoring her. My husband wants us to cut them off completely, which I do as well, but part of me doesn't, as well as all I want for my son is to have family around, and I wanted him to have the grandparent experience that I did. I also have other family members messaging me saying that I need to forgive and get along with my mum because of her having cancer, and she doesn't need the stress right now. But all I think is, why should I have to deal with the stress and basically abuse? Why are my feelings not being thought about? OP is not an AH for concerning about her newborn son. OP's parents are AH for making bad comments about her husband. OP is victim of a very toxic family. She has dealt emotional abuse and toxic behavior from them from years. OP concern is 100% valid. So I would rate OP's parents 2.5 and OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. AITA for insulting my parents because they allowed my abusive little sister move in with them. I, 30F, have historically had quite the tumultuous relationship, or lack thereof, with both my parents and my younger sister. 25F. We've got the classic angry, violently abusive father with likely undiagnosed autism. Thanks for that genetic gift, Dad. And the neglectful, immature, always high/drunk mother. This was especially true when I was very young, before my sister, M, was born, and the worst had subsided by the time she was about 3, and I was about 8, with an extremely terrifying renaissance when I was about 16 while M was not home. Because I was the oldest child in the house and a people-pleasing autist, I got the brunt of the physical and verbal abuse, while my mother tended to dote on M, and very clearly made M her favorite child. This has been said verbatim on a few occasions. We also have an older sister, E, 38, from our mother's previous marriage who never lived with us, but she is aware of the environment we grew up in. My father was not particularly kind to M, but the abuse was certainly not as severe or long-lasting. All that to say, M has always had emotional regulation issues and a penchant for physical violence and extreme verbal abuse towards not only peers and partners, but our parents and other family members as well. This was a concern I voiced repeatedly over the course of our childhood and adolescence and well into our early adulthood. She makes up for it by, retroactively, instead being doting and juvenile. I do not know if this is intentional. I suppose it doesn't matter. Maybe it does? Who's to say? Up until this past summer, M had been living at our parents' house with her boyfriend, 27M. She had taken a liking to B after he had been shot in an altercation with a neighbor, and she took care of him. This was years ago. He is doing okay now. M had been working at a thrift store. B was unemployed, I believe, but now works at the liquor store. This is relevant later. My parents were not charging them rent or utilities, and M was using my father's car, and eventually they noticed M's behavior had changed. She stopped going to work and became more erratic and violent, and my mother seemed to think she was on drugs harder than weed. We all smoke. This was a fear I have had since my sister found out via ancestry that my father was not her father, and our mother denied it. This was 2 or 3 years ago. When this was discovered, M and I were actually in a great spot as far as our relationship, and she had all my support and resources should she try to find her biological father. She has repeatedly asserted that she doesn't want to know him, which is fine. However, this was clearly a lie she told both herself and others. This past May, right before her birthday, I got a call from my mother. The police were at their house because M had assaulted our mother and pushed her into the corner of a table where she hit her head. M is not a small girl. Her boyfriend had also allegedly brandished a firearm at our mother. He legally has a CC, so they were of course both arrested and hit with temporary protective orders, and therefore unable to return home. After they were bailed out, E and I both received streams of horrible texts from M. In a thread with E, she called her a failure and a horrible mother, and a slew of other terrible things, and eventually ended with E cutting her off, as well as forbidding M to see her young children. Meanwhile, I was also subject to text messages wherein M called my girlfriend a man who should beat the shit out of me. My girlfriend is transgender, and I have been abused by a past partner which M knows, and that I should be glad she can't remember where I live. And also, I moved LOL. Obviously, I also cut her off. After court, my parents let the TPOs expire and offered M to come back because she and B were living in my dad's car. They refused. M got fired from her job shortly thereafter. Now, I had made it very clear to my parents that I wasn't coming over if M was under their roof. They have seen every text, every threat. So imagine my surprise on Christmas morning when I find out that they are both back in the house, though they weren't currently home. I was dumbstruck. They argued that they felt bad and the baby was homeless. And wouldn't I do the same thing if I had kids? He also didn't want B to lose his job because he is employed by the state. I completely lost it. I'm not fond of my parents to begin with, and don't come over often anyway, because they are extremely right-wing and not very bright, so I got visibly angry and flabbergasted. I told them that they were being foolish and soft, and that the dissonance between how they have always treated us is palpable, and that, even then, M and B under their roof again is unthinkably stupid and frankly unbelievable. Shortly after this, my mother casually mentioned that M had threatened to burn E's house down with the kids inside. When I asked if E knew about this, I started yelling, and I do not raise my voice at my parents. Trauma is because M is obviously dangerous, and what on earth could possibly make them think this was wise or safe or generous? My dad seems to think this was a wake-up call for her, but I strongly disagree considering I've been trying to warn them about her since she was a toddler. And also, she just threatened the lives of 2 infants. Hello? Is anybody home? Hello? I am now extremely low contact with them. I have only ever gone over on holidays to placate them, but they seem to think I'm the one who is being unreasonable and heartless. My extended family apparently agrees with them. You all, is it me? Am I the asshole? What do you even do? OP is not the AH for prioritizing his safety and cutting off contact with his violent sister and enabling parents. In this case, OP's parents and sister are AHs for their behavior, and I would rate them 2.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. As for OP, he is not an AH, and I would rate him 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump on to the next story from Eldon_phone. AITA for not talking to my kid and her physically abusive and violent mom? I, 27M, met the mother of my child at 21. She, 31F, was visiting a mutual friend of ours that summer, and the first time I laid eyes on her, I thought she was beautiful and different. She laughed loud and had a wide smile with nice teeth, brown sugar complexion and southern baked body eye kick. I introduced myself, but she never remembers that. Just that I was on a skateboard the first time she saw me. My boy said he called dibs, which was cool with me. It's not like I knew her or anything. Besides, I'm a skate rat from Jersey. She was out of my league anyways. They eventually start messing around. A couple months go by and we, the friend group, had been hanging out all summer doing what we normally do. Drink, smoke, strag, repeat. I'd been skating every day for at least 5 hours a day, so I'd often find them late at night when I was fried from the session and unwind wherever they were. One night at the mutual friend's house, see previous paragraph, my boy and his girl get into an argument about whether they were official or not. And well, let's just say the contract was null and void. The boys and I left, the girls stayed, and we talked and laughed about what just happened on the way back to my house. The girls probably did the same, but who knows? Eventually it comes to light that he never got to dive in that ocean, and that's basically what's been fueling the fire of frustration that culminated in the explosive argument they had in the house that day. They'd gone on dates, he'd brought her food, bought the wine she likes when we drink, 'cause nobody around us drinks wine. We were low-key alcoholics. My choice is whiskey in case anyone wondered. He thought he had a girlfriend. She thought she had an overzealous homeboy. Either way, they both had nothing at the end. During all that time, see previous paragraph, I had been checking his girl out on the low. Not strictly, but it was hard to deny her appeal. She's actually funny and not a complete idiot when she's sober or buzzed. She has a great taste in music, that's actually what we clicked on the most. We both had a mutual respect for the evolution of Tyler the Creator, and had pleasant disagreements about Erykah Badu versus Janet Jackson. These are all things my boy has little to no knowledge of or care for. We'd, his girl and I, often get caught up at the table talking casually about the aforementioned subjects often. It came to a point where she'd casually ask about me when I wasn't there, because I was out skating, saying, "He's actually pretty cool." That probably sparked the outburst that caused the argument I mentioned earlier. Why's she asking about him, and I'm right here? Energy, understandable. Either way, they stopped dating, but we all still hung out regularly. October came, so I spent lots more time with them in the house that we frequent. That meant I spent a lot more time with the girl, who would become the mother of my child. We talked a lot about more than just music now, as she really started opening up to me. We found ourselves in increasingly intimate settings, until eventually it was just me and her at my house one night. Well, me, her, and this girl who had given me head the night before. Anyway, we were in my room talking and then kissing, and then before I knew it, she was on top of me moaning loud ass. The girl in the next room, who I'd honestly forgotten about, came barging in upset that, well, she'd been forgotten about. The mother of my child got up, butt naked, turned around and said, "Leave before I make you. I'd gaff about nothing that you're saying to me right now." Even now, as I'm typing this, I can't help but smile because I've never had someone go so hard for me before or since. I fell in love with her right then and there. The next day, she's telling everyone how much she f***ed with me, how she f***ed me, how we're definitely in a relationship, and that was it. My boys heard this and were happy for me. I struggled with girls before this summer IDK WTF happened. It was crazy how it just turned around like that. Except one. No guesses as to who that was. We talked about it, and he eventually conceded that he was with her for the wrong reasons, and it makes sense why she went for my lover boy over him. He was just trying to I was just trying to make a friend and ended up We are not the same. Anyhow, the first 5 to 6 months were pretty normal, but we can't be kids forever, so I had to get a job, and that's when the trouble started. I got my first job at Vans on National Go Skate Day. It was one of the best jobs I ever had, and I miss it sometimes. Only sometimes. She started working at FedEx alongside my boy, who's been mentioned throughout this story, mostly because I had a car, and could pick them both up thanks to my schedule, plus the pay was good. I started to notice, though, my girl might have had a drinking problem. She drank every day, not a lot, but every day it was something. Wine, shots, whatever, as long as she could feel it. At first, I didn't care because I smoked weed, and everyone has their vices. Then she started missing work, oversleeping, and eventually got fired. Still not a big deal for me because I was blessed with a house by my parents, so we really didn't need the income, but then I had to blow my money on her habits. Sound familiar? I didn't realize it until it was out of hand, but my girlfriend is an alcoholic. I confronted her about it, and she got naturally defensive. I cared about her, so I really started digging, and found out about her trauma from past abuse by her ex-boyfriend. She's running from her problems, which I can relate to, and I vowed to not let her go through that alone. I'm realizing how long this post is right now, so I'll try to cut through the weeds a bit to finish this up in this next paragraph. We moved to a smaller apartment in a different city, so there wouldn't be much temptation to party with our regular crowd, but she would sneak and buy alcohol when I was at work, drink it all so I wouldn't see the bottles, but forget that she would actually be drunk. It was at that apartment when she first put her hands on me. It started with a slap for telling her she really shouldn't drink at all anymore, and it only got worse as I refused to change my stance on things, but I'm not getting my ass whooped by my mom for hitting a girl, so I decided I had to leave her. Wouldn't you know it, as soon as she's about to be out of my life for good, we find out we're expecting a kid. I've always wanted my own family since the one I was born into is scattered like dandelion seeds. At this point, I couldn't leave her, so I ended up in Texas with her. She wasn't drinking, and honestly, I've never been more happy with her than I was for those 9 months. Then Hans was born, and it all went left. She became even more abusive verbally and physically, and I had no one to lean on because all my friends and family were in Jersey. I have permanent dark marks under my eyes where she had been clawing at them, and I can't even think about her now without feeling a mixed bag of fear, love, and anxiety. I miss our kids so much, but I fear that if I get even remotely close to her, mom again, something really bad is going to happen to me, and I'm honestly terrified. I don't know what to do, or if I should even do anything, and just let my daughter live in peace without me. OP is not an AH for cutting ties with his abusive alcoholic partner. OP's mental peace and well-being are the foremost priorities, but abandoning his daughter is unfortunate. OP must seek legal advice to establish contact with his child. As for scores, I would rate OP 0 and OP's partner 3.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump onto the next story. From Love Me I Know It. AITA for playing the victim because my ex went on Tinder after we broke up? We had been dating for almost little more than a year by this November. But after my birthday, I broke up with him. It was after an argument where I jokingly asked him to give me attention, and he instead started shouting at me, calling me annoying and such, because he had a tough day with his family. Now the thing is, almost 2 years I had waited for him. Almost 2 years, everything about him was prioritized over everything about me. I won't go into details a lot, but let's just say that the first date he ever took me on was a year into the relationship, and the first flower was on our 1-year anniversary. Apart from a handful efforts he had made for me, I did everything for him, stayed on calls for 3 to 4 hours on end, motivated him, loaned him money, wrote his college SOPs for him, called around for job interviews, made romantic efforts too, like he would mention a thing he likes in passing, and I'd send it over the next occasion, took his verbal abuses because I had to be so understanding. So basically, I had gone above and beyond. Now I had been a little immature in all honesty, but I just wanted time. He would commonly take 15 to 20 hours for a call back and wouldn't even text me. Or he would go out with friends and wouldn't pick my calls, but would pick theirs, went out with me, etc. I patiently waited for my time, which in his words was going to arrive when I'd leave for abroad this Jan, so around 3 months before it. But in November, I realized it will never come. Throughout the relationship, I had been attached to him over one thing in specific: his loyalty. We hadn't had yet, but did other stuff. I'm a virgin and my parents are strict, so I thought how he must love me so much to have waited so long, even though he was active early on. Now after we broke up, this feeling got reinforced, because whenever the topic of moving on came up, he would say he has no interest in doing so. So I stayed attached and kept doing favors for him. Sending him flowers abroad, kissing him in my bedroom, which was a first for me, sending care packages for his exam anxiety, etc. We used to say I love you and talked for hours and made out when we met. Recently near Christmas, I saw he had Tinder on his phone. When I asked him about it, he said he doesn't owe me an explanation, and after some words left me crying in the mall alone. Started apologizing a few hours later, then started guilt-tripping me that I too went on Tinder last year. I went during a 2-week break we had last year for one evening and told him that very day. Anyway, I gave in. We met a couple of times after that, and he was an absolute dream. But lately, he has started slipping back to his old self. It's been 10 days since I found out, and he keeps telling me to stop making it a bigger deal than it is, and that he has apologized enough. Keeps making jokes, takes hours to call back again, and my mind is making me crazy. I feel disgusted with myself and him. I keep imagining him lying to me to see other women, although he swears he only talked and didn't meet anyone, but I have no way to confirm since he refused to show me the chats. I keep thinking he's lying about that too. Maybe he even already had, or he was probably looking for someone on his trip abroad too when I was sending him flowers. He hid his phone from me on our 1-year anniversary too, which almost led to a fight, but I let it go because I thought I could trust him, but maybe he was hiding it even then. And how long would he had kept up the lie if I wouldn't have found out? What should I do? Do I have no right to be mad at him since we're technically friends? OP is not an AH for wanting transparency from his partner. She is hurt by her partner betrayal of trust for making a Tinder profile while being with OP. OP feelings of disgust and distrust are completely valid, given her partner's behavior and lack of transparency. As for scores, I would rate OP's partner 2.5 and OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump onto the next story from loose-object-1980. My 21F on and off boyfriend, 29M, is trying to ruin what I have left of my life. What do I do? AITA? Back in February 2024, I started dating my now boyfriend. He acted normal at first and had a good job. Then we moved to with each other, We were supposed to flip cars together and resell them, so he left his job so he could do independent work since he is really good with cars. Well, the thing is that he didn't work on the cars I invested in. I had inherited money from selling my deceased mother's home, and I was looking to be financially smart. Anyways, the work didn't get done, and slowly more and more I came responsible for the bills. We had discussed before we moved in that it would be 50-50 with the bills. I repeatedly told him never mind, and just get another job again. And seeing that he was a lot of experience, he always finds jobs easily. However, he begins to make excuses, and slowly, like I previously said, I paid for the rent, groceries, his gas money, his phone bill a few times, the internet, and everything else we share. When he broke his phone, he asked me to buy one for him, on the notion he would pay me back, which he never did. Then I became angry, and got into arguments with him about not paying me back, and me paying all the bills. He told me that is what girlfriends do, and that when one person is down, the other picks the other partner up. Except it's had been multiple months, and he wasn't making any efforts to pay half. He also began telling me that all I care about is money, and that I was greedy and money hungry. Of course, this then made me feel extremely guilty, even though I just wanted what was mine from my mother and father, and take care of myself. Fast forward, and I tell my cousin to move on because she needed a place to stay with her baby, and she was my best friend at the time. Well, long story short, after my boyfriend and I got into a fight, and I broke up with him and told him to get out of my house because he wasn't paying anything, he proceeded to message my cousin and began lying, saying I was talking badly about her. He was saying that I was complaining that she doesn't do anything in the house when he was saying that. And he was complaining and asking me why she didn't have to have a job, and he did. And he lied and said I said all of things that he said about her to him. I know on multiple occasions I defended her and explained to him that she was a single mother, and I defended her multiple times. Well, he told her the opposite, and she believed him because she hates when anybody says anything about her. There was another situation which we all drank, and we were drunk. During this situation, her baby almost choked, and I was genuinely concerned. We then all went out walking in a not safe area. My boyfriend had said something rude to me, and I walked back home and left them. Well, I was scared because he wasn't coming back, and they were acting reckless, and I was worried about them. And me being emotionally and drunk, I called out Aunt and told her I'm worried because they weren't coming back. Well then, my cousin and boyfriend came back in, heard me being scared, and my cousin took it as I was talking crap about her, when all I told my aunt was that I was worried and that I didn't want to drink anymore. Since that day, I have not drank alcohol ever again. But fast forward, my boyfriend told her I was talking about her, so then they started texting each other behind my back and talking trash about me. He was lying about me saying stuff that I never said. And he was talking about our private life with her as well. Well, next thing you know, they are flirting, and he's telling her that they have so much in common and that he should have met her first, and she had a boyfriend at the time. Yet, she was flirting back with my boyfriend, and she was talking about hanging out with him, and he was talking about her legs and how he was staring at them. I was enraged, and my heart was broken. I had supported him, put up with paying all the bills, and now he was flirting with his ex-girlfriends at the time, cousin, just to get back at me. I ended up taking him back stupidly because I believed him when he told me he was sorry and told me that he loved me so much, and he took me out for my birthday. I told her to leave my home after she betrayed me, and she moved out about a month and a half ago. My boyfriend and I had been arguing back and forth about him paying the bills when he said he was going to pay half because he had signed the lease too. I was screaming and arguing with him. Yes, I know I shouldn't, and I've been working on staying calm. And he grabbed my mouth and neck and was aggressively manhandling me and telling me to be quiet. I called my aunt screaming and crying, and she did her best to calm me down while I told her what happened. She told me to call the cops and file a report, but I decided against it because I didn't want to be petty, and I also didn't want to do anything that would cause him to become vengeful, because he is, and he really scares me, and I feel as if I have to watch my back. The next day, we got into another argument and fight, and I was screaming. He called the cops, lied to them, and said I poked him with a weapon, which I most certainly did not do and wouldn't do, of course, when I was screaming. He took a video of me reacting to him after he said terrible things. He always acts different around his family and other people. He acts like a calm, cool guy, and that he doesn't do anything wrong around them. As soon as I scream, because he's provoking me, which I shouldn't do, he whips out the camera, takes a video of me screaming, and uses it as proof that I'm a bad, terrible person, and that everything is my fault. Of course, he showed the cops this video. Needless to say, they most likely believed the false accusation solely based on the fact I was screaming. I have not screamed since and threw out anything sharp in my house in the trash, for fear he will accuse me again. I try to tell people what he does, and they don't believe me because he acts so different around others. He makes me feel crazy, like I'm just imagining everything. I had a talk with him about falsely accusing me to the cops, and he literally apologized to me for it and said that he shouldn't have done it. So, he acknowledges that I did not do what he accused me of. My family knew him and his family since they were kids, and they have repeatedly told me him and his family are habitual liars, and they lie all the time. His father also abused his mother physically their whole childhood, and his father abused him and his sisters as well. It is my fault for not heeding their warnings about him, and I wish I never got myself involved in this relationship. I have sworn off of ever dating again, and I'm opting to live by myself and be single for the rest of my life in fear of this happening again. Besides everything else, I have caught him stealing from stores, lying to his family multiple times to their face, lying to me all the time. He's constantly boasting about himself and how hard of a worker he is, and how he does the job better than his co-workers. He constantly talks about how I'm putting him down when I tell him that he's a liar, because I keep catching him lying to me. He's called me ugly, fat, because I gained some weight from emotional eating that I'm trying to take care of now. I already hate how I look, and I hate myself. I always want to improve myself, but I feel like I'm my worst with him here, and I'm stuck on an expensive rental, and I'm worried he won't help pay the bills. He had paid a few months at one point for the rent, but had gotten fired twice from 2 new jobs he had. We also went door dashing together to make money after he got fired, and half of it was my money because I worked for half of it. He drained my bank account, and I'm protecting what's left of it. I bought cat litter for my cat, and he literally got mad at me for using the DoorDash money when I made half of it. I never buy anything like purses or shoes, and it was something my cat needed. He constantly calls me controlling, but he won't let me have money from the DoorDash money. He won't let me talk to my family about him and what he does, and he says I'm crap talking when I do talk to my aunt because I'm so distraught. I've been completely broken, feeling guilty all the time, and depressed. I know I do things as well, and that I'm not perfect or even close to it at all, because nobody is. He makes me feel like the villain in his story. He used to talk about me to my other aunt and my cousin, any chance he could. However, I wasn't allowed to talk to my aunt about what was going on. I tried to work on myself because drinking affected me badly, and I quit drinking. I quit saying anything about him to my family, and now I'm trying to stop myself from yelling when I'm mad. I'm exhausted, and he calls me a narcissist and a manipulator and a gaslighter all the time. He didn't start calling me a gaslighter or manipulator until I pointed out when he was doing it. Everything I try to bring up the way he makes me feel or something he is doing that is wrong, he just switches it around and tells me that I do that, and that he doesn't. Every time I say anything, I want out of this situation so bad, but I'm scared he's going to cause so much trouble, pain, heartache, and as many issues as he can to get back at me. I don't know what to do. OP is not the AH, rather, her boyfriend is an AH for being emotionally and financially abusive, manipulating her and lying to others. She has been trying to improve herself and manage the relationship, but he continuously belittles her and drains her resources. So, OP's boyfriend is an AH, and I would rate him 3.5 out of 5 on the AH scale, and OP gets nothing. What do the MacReddit fans think? Is the OP an AH or not? Let me know in the comment section below. If you like the stories I brought you, just hit the like button, share them as much as you can, and don't forget to subscribe to MacReddit for a daily dose. Bye bye, see you tomorrow with some more spicy fries.